Hey everybody, this is Dr. Kristy Taylor, and I'm excited to kick off the first annual, the first Black Health Summit hosted by WORxK Solutions, LLC. And I am here today with my special guest and best friend and co-host, Coach Angela Johnson. She is a transformative wellness and spiritual coach. And she's going to be talking a little bit to us today about chronic illnesses and Black health and wellness in general. But before we get into that discussion today and Angela introduced herself, I really want to just take time to acknowledge all of the awesome guests that we have coming in to speak to us today on a variety of topics related to health in the Black community. We have a great lineup of guests to include Dr. 𝗄𝗲𝗹𝗹-𝗯𝗲𝗶, Ms. 𝗄𝗲𝗹𝗹-𝗯𝗲𝗶, Mr. George Brooks, Dr. Brittany Case. Unfortunately, Mr. Raymond Phipps was not able to be with us here today. We also have Dr. Ann Hester, and then we'll wrap up the conversation with Mr. Bradley Troop. And hopefully we get an opportunity to have a surprise guest. Now, this event was inspired because my background is in health education, but I am also a career coach. And it was inspired really because of some of my goal to be focused, to have a more social impact and do things for our community. So we are here celebrating Black History Month. We are showcasing Black excellence, but we're also doing something to proactively talk about some of the challenges and strategies in our community that we can use to improve health outcomes. So with that being said, I want to once again introduce our first guest and my co-host, Coach Angela Johnson. And she's going to tell us a little bit about her background. She's going to share her career experiences. And then we're going to just talk a little bit about chronic health issues in our community and strategies for how we can work to address them. And then along the way, you'll see some of the experts. They'll be sharing statistics with you. They'll be sharing their background and experiences, and they will be talking about strategies and solutions. So we'll talk a little bit about chronic health and mental health in the beginning, but again, those topics will the experts will really take a deeper dive into that. So with that being said, let me hand it over to Coach Angela J. And Coach, can you start the conversation off by telling us what inspired you, a little bit about your background, what inspired you, and then we'll transition to that discussion on some of those disparities within our community.
Hi, everyone. I am Coach Angela J. And my background is nursing. I am in the military. I've been in the military for about 20 years. So, and I've also I work in still currently, internal medicine. And if you don't know what internal medicine is for people who have 2 or more chronic illnesses. So me being in the military and just me growing up in a military family, I was taught always to be very strong. And so my journey to open up a wellness center stems from that. So I wanted to give a platform for other people and show them how to intrusive thoughts that are in their minds. So one of the things that I do is I help individuals towards a journey of holistic wellness and inner growth. I do this by one-on-one coaching. I support you by doing transformative techniques. I also use a lot of cognitive dissonance. Also, one of the things that I didn't mention, I am a nurse, but I also have my bachelor's in counseling and I have my master's in clinical mental health. So I am very passionate about Black people in their mental health, as well as their physical health.
So, Angela, some of the statistics. So, Angela, you just recently launched your business.
I just want to encourage
Sound Mind Wellness LLC. And so I'm so excited for you. And we're here to celebrate the launch of this business. And you're taking all of the experiences in your background and you're using it to help other people. And so we're very happy for you. When we talk about chronic illnesses and things in the Black community, we have statistics that says Black Americans are 20% more likely to experience serious psychological distress. We have blood pressure rates among African Americans are more than the highest in the world, and nearly 60% are diagnosed with hypertension. So as a nurse and health professional, when we talk about chronic diseases, let's talk a little bit about your experiences and kind of like, even though most of your population is military, right? What has just been your professional experiences, and how do you work to support people in your community through your business and organization?
So what I have seen, especially with the African American community, is there are a lot of factors that hinder us from receiving the health care that we need. Also, we experience our health, we experience it different than other people. And it's just our genetic makeup. And those things, like we have more high blood pressure, diabetes, things like that. And that's just because of our genetic makeup. So we need to make our community aware of these things. And there's a lot of things that go into those things, such as historical factors, the fact that we've experienced discrimination and maltreatment in the healthcare industry. There's social economic factors that go into that as well, as far as we have a lack of access to healthcare. A lot of people living in rural communities, just lack of higher paying jobs, access to healthcare through their jobs. So those type of things keep us from that. And as far as mental health, it's a cultural stigma for us. We are taught to be strong. Like I said before, I was raised in a military household, so I was taught to be strong, not to think, talk about anything that's going on with me, anything that we experience in our bodies. We tend to
So, Angela, we're having just a little bit of trouble hearing you, but to your point, you are correct. I think the phone is freezing up a little bit on you. So, to your point, Angela, you are correct.
Just pushed through.
Yeah, exactly.
And we don't want to do that. So, the purpose of this.
So, Angela, I think your phone is freezing up. So, we're going to go ahead and bring in our first guest. So a lot of what you said is correct, right? A lot of it's genetic, some of it is lifestyle, but we want to make sure that, and that's the purpose of today, for us to be able to bring in experts who are going to be able to talk about some of these challenges that we're having in our community. Are you able to hear me? You were freezing up just a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and
I'm able to hear you.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and bring in our first guest. I'm so excited for us to be able to kick this off. And you kicked us off right by talking about, yes, it's genetic. Some of it is access to care. A lot of it can also be lifestyle. But when we talk about lifestyle, how do you make a change when you don't always have access? So we talk about things like food deserts, where we're literally entire communities where your access to food is a Dollar General, right? That might be your local grocery store, or more urban areas where people are literally doing their grocery shopping at the local 7-Eleven, and you're eating all of these foods and things that are not healthy for you. So we have experts that are going to dig a little bit deeper into those topics, but then we place special emphasis today on mental health, right? Because we actually have 3 mental health experts who are coming in to speak to us. And the first one that I'm going to bring in is Dr. 𝗄𝗲𝗹𝗶. The reason why we really did this focus on mental health, because it's exactly what you said, Coach Johnson, where you talked a little bit about the stigma. I don't know if you have any statements that you want to add to that. I just want to make sure that we can hear you. Again, this is a live event, so it might freeze up. But if so, we're going to go ahead and switch to our next guest. So you talked a little bit about the stigma, and you were raised to be strong. And is that what really inspired you to become a counselor? Because I know that that's something that you've been working towards. So because of the technical difficulties?
That is what I'm working towards. I'm working towards, yes.
So I'm going to go ahead and bring in our first guest, Dr. 𝗄𝗲𝗹𝗶, and we're going to continue on, okay? So Angela, you just hang in there and we'll just continue on. So with that being said, and we're talking about some of the challenges with psychological, mental health, and chronic disease in our community, we're going to go ahead and kick it off with our first guest, and that is Dr. 𝗄𝗲𝗹𝗶. So Angela, you'll be here to ask her questions. We'll be monitoring the process throughout. If you're having technical difficulties, feel free to drop in and drop out, okay? So I'm going to add Dr. Crawford to our discussion. Hey, Dr. Crawford, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Man, I'm really excited this morning to be able to kick off this event. It's been a long time in the making. And as Coach Johnson said, you know, in our communities, when we talk about issues with chronic health, when we talk about some of that stuff is genetic, right? But some of it is lifestyle. But again, how do you change lifestyle when you don't necessarily have access? But one of the biggest things is that goes unspoken, as she mentioned before, is mental health, right? And so we have 3 mental health experts, and you are our very first, Dr. 𝗄𝗲𝗹𝗹-𝗯𝗲𝗶. She's an adult psychiatrist. She's an author. She's a podcast host. This is doing her thing. She's going to talk to us a little bit today about psychological and emotional wellness and the power of bouncing back. And, you know, I'm going to kick this discussion off by, because I'm a career coach, so I have to ask, you know, what inspired you to get into your career? But then I'm going to let you take it from there and get this conversation going.
So I've always wanted to be a doctor. That was like my primary goal. I don't have any doctors in my family. So actually how I got into like wanting to be a doctor, my brother, who is right after me, my second brother, first brother, actually, he had asthma, very severe. And we always ended up in the ER because of asthma attacks. He was allergic to everything. We didn't smoke. I didn't smoke, clearly. I was like 5. But, you know, no one in my family smoked, but he always had triggers. So we spent like a ton of time in Charity Hospital. I'm from New Orleans, and it's right next to Tulane. So I used to always see like the doctors and the white coats and everything. So I was like, I want to be like them, because they made him feel better. We got to go home in timely fashion. But, you know, I was like, oh, I could be like them. I didn't really know what that meant, but that's kind of the journey I had. I didn't want to be a psychiatrist because, like Angela said, Black people, like, yeah, I'm Black, believe that they're strong. All I need is King Jesus, and that's pretty much it. And I'm not going to trust you with your urban medicine. So I actually just wanted to be, you know, a surgeon, actually, because that's what I was mostly exposed to. And actually I started reading books by Ben Carson, Gifted Hands, and that's kind of how I was inspired to continue on to medicine. So some of the things that changed me was my brother, Ben Carson, the Gifted Hands. And also when I picked psychiatry, I was actually on a surgery rotation, and I actually was going to first assist on a pneumonectomy, which was actually pretty cool. So it was my patient, so I was getting him prepared. And so he wanted to be put to sleep prior to his surgery because he was scared of the lights. In a theater, the operating theater, it's really bright, brighter than this, and hot. So he was really anxious. But everyone had to just get him prepared for the surgery, and he was about to jump off the table. So I grabbed his hand. I didn't grab him. I grabbed his hand. And so I started talking to him about some of the things I had known from him, from like his history. His daughter was graduating soon. You know, what's your first thing you're going to eat? I'm from New Orleans. I went to school in New Orleans. Like, what's the first thing you're going to eat when you get out the hospital? Because you're going to get no diet once after the surgery. You ain't going to eat nothing. What's the first thing you're going to eat? You know, so we started talking about that. And I was like, you know, I thought, oh, maybe this is better, right? Helping someone get through their anxiety. And I was like in my head, like, what is that? But then I went into the psychiatry rotation, and I was afraid of them. Like, you know, I was afraid of the people talking to themselves on the wall. You know, they'll do a lot of different things. You know, mental health can be very significantly impactful to a person, and they can have some strange behavior. So I was afraid. But once I got used to it, once I started taking care of the patients, I started having sympathy and empathy and wanted to help them throughout my lifetime. So that's why I picked psychiatry.
We're going to get into the dynamics, but you just said something, because I want to talk about a little bit of the statistics piece and some of the concerns in our community with Black mental health, right? I'm good at pulling up these stats. It says less than 2% of psychiatrists in the United States are Black. So you represent a minority in the minority. Coach Jay, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
All right, girl, you sounding good now. So now that you're back, feel free to jump in that conversation, because, you know, we were talking about some of those dynamics with Black folks in mental health. Let me plug my computer real quick with all my preparing today. With Black folks in mental health, there is a stigma associated with it, right? And Dr. Crawford just pointed out how she was able to go in there and immediately you found yourself literally soothing the patient. And when we talk about the importance of being able to connect with patients and seeing people that look like you, Can you speak a little bit around that dynamic? And Coach Day, you might want to chime in too once she's done speaking. And then I just kind of want you to move, after we talk about that piece, Dr. Crawford, just move into a general discussion around those topics that we pinged you for, and talking about what you've seen as a professional working in this community.
Okay. So the key, I think, was that I did look like him, right? And I also had a rapport because I saw him each morning. So that was key. I think there only are 2%. First of all, there's not many Black doctors. That's one, right?
Yeah.
So then with Black therapists and Black psychiatrists, there's even less, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, it just starts to wonder, like, what you'll see mostly is like internal medicine, family docs, African Americans, and then there's some specialist surgeons. That's what we go into, primary care stuff. But we also just don't have enough, right?
Yeah, because you're talking about the percentage of where we are make up a small percentage. So when I say 2%, you're literally that 2% within the percentage that's already there, right?
Right.
And so when you talk about some of the stigmas that you see, so let's talk about your experience as a Black healthcare consumer. And then also, how does that look different for you as a healthcare provider? But before I do that, let me let Coach Johnson chime in here. Did you want to add anything to that?
No, I mean, I agree 100%. That's one of the things that, I mean, like I said, just growing up and being in a military household, very structured, very just dependent on God. And we were taught that, and I can go back to the historical factors that kept us there, just working in the fields, picking cotton. You couldn't be sick. You couldn't. And then, even after that, I live in the South. I'm not from the South, but I hear a lot of stories about how the Jim Crow laws and everything prevented them from, you couldn't call out. You had to kind of do what you had to do. So we didn't have that kind of access. So people who were mentally challenged or had any kind of mental health issues, they were, beaten even by their parents. Like, don't say that, don't do that, don't act that way, don't think those thoughts. So
yeah. So what has been your experience, Dr. Crawford?
So actually, as a consumer, I actually was thinking, that's funny. So my first experience as a consumer, besides like regular checkups, but as like a Black adult, I was actually on a psychiatry rotation, and I actually ended up having emergency surgery. I got sick. I called in. Well, actually, I think my mama called in, but my attending didn't believe that I was sick. No one believed I was a medical student. They thought I was pain seeking. So it was all kinds of craziness. And so I was actually at that hospital doing my rotation. He didn't believe me. And I was like, well, tell him what my room number is. So I guess he checked the computer. Then he bought like a dozen roses and was like, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? Blah, blah, blah. And then I remember how they treated me in the ER and the OR, and how the surgeon like examined me. And I was just like, man, what's going on? Like, if I could get treated like this, and I actually know what I'm talking about, and I'm training. I was a third year medical student, training to be a doctor. I'm on rotations in this hospital. What do other people experience? And actually, I remember my follow-up. He's like, I actually follow up. He was like, oh, I'm glad you're better, blah, blah, blah. Then like a month later, I was in the elevator, and he walked in, and he was like, you look so different to me today. Like, why? Because my coat's white? I mean, like, what was different? Like, I didn't have the same, I didn't have locks at the time. I had the same hairstyle. My face didn't change. Like, what? My coat changed?
Yeah, I always find it very interesting, right? When you have to give your whole resume to people just for them to treat you. Like we when we talk about us having a seat at the table, whether it's Black people, as Black women, it's like we feel like, okay, I'm getting treated this way. And I when you were saying how you were being treated as a medical student, I was thinking about what part of the things that inspired me was like the recent event. Actually, that's what really triggered. I have to pull up the young lady's name. The recent event in Ohio where the young lady had to carry a baby to term that she ended up having a corpse, and then was charged with
Yeah.
tampering with the court. That is literally what inspired this event, because I said we got to do something, right? Because that might not have necessarily have been race-based, but when you read the whole story, it was definitely the nurse who called and reported her. That was definitely race-based. And then I think about like Serena Williams, right? Who has all of this money. She's getting ready to have a baby. She's telling them like, I'm having pain, I'm this, I'm that, and nobody's listening to her. So I just always found it amazing, like when we were showcasing all of this Black excellence today, but in every day, you know, you might just see me walking around the grocery store with a bonnet on. So, you know, how you gonna
Right.
do I have to give you my whole resume to be treated as a human or with some level of dignity and respect? Do I have to do that? And so for somebody to say that to you when you standing in the elevator minding your business, well, you look different today. Well, of course I look different. I'm not sick, right? But
Right, I'm not sick.
And so let me give you some stats on Black mental health, because I want you to talk more about, you know, your passion behind this, why you're doing it, your commitment to make a difference. Because one of the things we want to make sure is that we're not only plugging ourselves and promoting but we're really here for the conversation for the Black community, right? And part of that is I want each speaker to make sure that we're providing strategies and solutions. So it says, you know, here's some stats. Only 1 in 3 African American adults with mental health needs, they actually receive treatment. Black Americans are 20% more likely to experience psychological distress than non-Hispanic whites. There's even, when we talk about dealing with like DEIA, there's even like the stress that comes from just having to deal with racism, right? There's that additional stress. Suicide rates among Black children aged 5 to 11 have doubled since the early 1990s. When you got a child that's outside playing with a fake gun, with a toy gun, and get shot just for being a child. We have a child that's walking home with some Skittles and some tea, minding their business, and gets attacked by somebody who's supposed to be a security guard. And we have to deal and live with all of these disparities. So what are your thoughts and insight on that?
You know, we have to see it. You know, I actually was looking at a movie the other day, and I was like, man, you know, TV and media and movies can really trigger you. Like, you know, reliving the fake gun, reliving the Trayvon Martin's shooting, like, or Sandra Bland, or like hearing that, like, he's like, Jesus, I can't even get in my car and go to this grocery store. I can't even discuss with anyone or challenge anyone's authority, you know. But you're right. So mistrust. So 25%, what is it? 25% of African Americans actually seek mental health care versus 40% of whites. Mm-hmm. And also with the 25%, not many people have insurance, right? 10% of African Americans have insurance. So then, you know, how do you see me, right? They're not going to let you see me unless you can pay them, right? You know, I can pro bono all I want, but this is not going to happen, you know. So access to care is a big thing. Stigma, racism, how we perceive how other cultures see us. How our family has told us, you know, like, we can't tell everybody our business. This is our business. You know, don't tell people outside the house. You know, go talk to Jesus. Don't talk to, you know, the white man. Whatever it is. I mean, I'm from the South. I had a lot of different things thrown at you.
Family business need to be told. You have things happening in families like molestation, abuse, and you know, we gotta start speaking on that stuff.
And we should, because when it comes out in your adult life, like I had someone ask me recently, you know, how do I stop having the thoughts of him touching me when I was a kid? You know, I was like, well, one, you have to start talking about it. You have to seek help. You know, also you have to just do other things to distract yourself. But that's a different conversation. I wanted to talk.
We got just a few minutes left, but all of those things you're talking about is so important, right? Those are visible topics that is obviously meant for it to come up. And I know you're going to transition here, but I appreciate you just mentioning it, right? Because sometimes, because of the stigma associated with it, we get into these conversations and we only want to talk about, like, hey, you need to go seek mental health. But it's stuff happening behind the scenes in our families, like all the stuff that you just mentioned. Like, people say, don't talk about it, don't engage with it, right? Because we got to keep this in the family. So generations later, people are still suffering and dealing with mental health issues because they was molested, abused, you know, all of this stuff. and we gotta address it. So thank you for even opening up the door forward.
Also, people don't know how to communicate, right? And it's just worse now. Now we have like, all we do is stay on the social media. So what my tips are, this is where I'll transition to, is when you're seeking care, you know, really there's nothing I haven't heard. I'm always shocked sometimes, but it's nothing I haven't heard. So, or even experienced in my career. I'm 10, 14 years in now. And they're there to help you in some sense, no matter what it is, they want to help, you know. So don't be afraid to ask questions. People seem so afraid to ask questions to their providers, right? You know, ask the important questions. I mean, if you feel like there's some tension between you and your therapist, or you and your psychiatrist, or you and your doctor, you got to be respectful, but maybe bring it up. We're just human. You know, maybe I'm having a bad day. Maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe it's not meant that way. Maybe, you know, maybe there's an emergency, you know. So have some grace. Be okay with an opening conversation. Be open-minded. You know, I feel like people always Google stuff before they get to their doctors. So it's sort of like a battle between, okay, I need to assess you. Oh no, I have bipolar. Wait. Wait. You
right.
know,
I'm screening a diagnosis myself. I show up dead. I died yesterday, according to these symptoms on WebMD.
You know, if you Google, I mean, don't confuse my MD with a Google search. But you know, I want you to educate yourself, but at least be open-minded that we can have a conversation. You know, so ask questions, be open-minded, and don't be on the fence. Not be on the fence. Don't be defensive. You know, because just ask the question, you know, be open. That's what I think. I know there's a lot of mistrust because of racism, trauma, microaggressions, what we read, the serious experiments, you know, what else? How healthcare was treated, like, you know, the segregations, all of that things. But, you know, it's a bit different, but not so much. But you still have a right to have open communications with your providers and at least seek help. You know, and the ER is not the best place to seek help.
No.
I mean, you know, actually, I forgot to write the statistics down, but it's like for everything, for African Americans, for mental health, for medicine, like hypertension, they go to the ER. But that doesn't allow someone to get to know you and learn your struggles, the psychological things, the economical things, and we can help in some sense. There's resources that you may not even know about, but if you go to the ER doctors don't want to see you. A lot
of times it's access, because the ER can't turn you away. That's how a lot of people end up.
And I understand that, and it is access to care. But if you are able to get in, which you can, and follow up. Some people do. Some people have primary care doctors and still go to the ER.
Yeah.
For quickness, right? It's not.
I want to say, Dr. Crawford, that is very correct. People, they have primary care physicians and they still go to the ER. And I think that goes back to what you said a few minutes ago about being on the defensive about any illness that may be diagnosed to you. So if I go to the ER, I just had high blood pressure that one time. It's not continuous. I just had anxiety that one time. It's not continuous. So I think that
you know, I never thought. You know, that's true. Actually, that's true. I think that's what it is. Like, oh no, my pressure was just high that day. And he gave me medicine, I was fine.
Yes.
You know? So that okay.
Well, I hear that a lot. I ask, do you know what your normal blood pressure normally runs? If I take someone's blood pressure is high, I'm like, hey, does it normally run? I don't know. I had it one time. I went to the ER. I had anxiety one time, just went to the ER. I was diagnosed with bipolar one time at the ER.
Not one time at the ER.
You know, I never thought about it, but you're right. Anyways, try, if you have access, try to get an actual provider, because you know you got diabetes. You know your sugar's high. You know your blood pressure high. You got the headache. You got the blurry vision. Come on now.
Yes.
Everybody in your family got it. You ate a really well on Thanksgiving.
Man, these were some great tips, Dr. Crawford, and I'm so thankful for you joining us. And I know you're going to be back for the panel, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, but I got to make sure you get a quick plug for your business or practice or anything that you're doing. And then, of course, we'll give you another round before we bring on the next, at the end when we do the roundtable. But tell us a little bit, quick plug for your business or events.
Yeah, so I actually just opened up private practice and I serve Pennsylvania area. If you go to my website, 𝗯𝗄𝗃𝗃𝗃.com, I have open availability. I only can take PA residents, but otherwise Pennsylvania residents. Maybe I should be a little bit more specific. But I'm completely open. So,
hey, man, this has been Sasha. She's in the chat. She says she likes the realness of the conversation because I mean, in the 20 years I've been in healthcare, the one thing to Coach Angela's point, I've never just thought about it like, oh yeah, I just got diagnosed with bipolar one time in the ER. You know what I mean?
didn't thought about it either, but you're right.
So Centrell, so thank you so much for joining us for this first part of the conversation, and we look forward to having you in the roundtable. We're going to bring on our next guest, and then Coach Angela is going to introduce our next guest for us. Okay. Thank you so much. All right. So ready?
I can't see who the next guest is.
All right. So I'm going to introduce Mrs. 𝗄𝗲𝗹𝗯𝗲𝗶 Davis. We're so excited to have her on. She is a certified trauma therapist and elite mindset coach, and she's going to help us to continue this discussion about youth mental health. And again, so, we have Coach Angela J here, who is a nurse and who's passionate about mental health and wellness. But, we really are relying on you guys to take a deep dive too as these, specific experts on these topics. And so we are so excited, 𝗄𝗲𝗹𝗯𝗃, to have you on today and for you to share a little bit about your background and experiences. And as the conversation goes, keep it real, because Sasha is in the comments cheering for you, right? Okay.
Yes, that is Sasha. Hi, Sasha. How you doing? Hi, my name's 𝗄𝗲𝗹𝗯𝗃 Davis, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker, as was mentioned. And I have over 23 years of experience as a mental health professional, and I am the owner of Safe Roots, which is a Christian-based mental health and wellness private practice. So I'm here today. We're going to talk about youth. We're going to talk about our youth, our darlings. We love them.
We do. We do. So
we're gonna like look at it from the aspect of one unique thing about my practice is that we work with student athletes. So you say I am around youth from probably ages 8 up until we could say 18, but we know it can go to 21 if we really think about it. And so it is a unique population, especially with the rise of Gen Z, the ending of the millennials and the rise of Gen Zs, that makes a significant difference in how we do things and how we communicate with them.
Okay. So what has your experience been? What really, I always have to ask the question because I'm starting off as like the career coach portion, right? When you talk about what gave you this passion to be able to go this route, like to the different routes you can go, what and specifically, you're working primarily with kids with sports, right? But like what inspired you to go this route in your career?
Yes, that is a great question. So I have always say, like, I've always had a heart for people ever since I was young. I was the one that was like, so tell me what's going on. Like I was that friend, I was that person. My friends used to jokingly say, well, when I, say I'm gonna go get my license. They're like, well, you've been our therapist forever. And I'm like, okay. So I feel like, on a deeper level, I was called to do this work. It is something that I enjoy, helping individuals to have mental wealth is what I call it, being wealthy in your mind, understanding patterns that they may have to unlearn, those kind of things. I always say we do the best that we can with the knowledge that we have at the time, but it's very good to continue to grow. And so my career led me into first working with adults and working with parents. And a lot of times it would be by working with parents, we're talking about the children. And then I would also, you know, have friends and have kids. And how I got into actually the niche of working with student athletes is because I have an athlete myself, right? I am a parent, and I have a athlete that is now a teenager. And it was just something that came natural when we were maybe it's about 11 or 12. We really started just working on what mental wellness looks like, and really instituting like what is mental health, because there is a stigma. And even with my own child, he was like, yeah, like you're my mom, so that's different. But another therapist means something else. So I learned, you know, like what the generations really thought about mental health. And as the guest said previously, there is a big stigma. And so that's what led me down that road. Being in the sports world, being around a lot of youth, I would see like some of the struggles and the pressures that they have. So a lot of times we do talk about youth today. I hear that like they're on their phone or play the games.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of things that they encountered that, quite frankly, I didn't have to encounter growing up, right? The world wasn't at my fingertips on the phone, you know, and that's not their fault. Like, it's not their fault. It's just the era that they were born in. And so I started to really like understand, and I enjoy working with the youth and seeing it through their eyes, because they're our next generation. And so that's what kind of led me down. But again, like I said, it kind of starts from this is what God called me to do. He's given me a passion for people.
Well, I want to hit you with some statistics for, you know, working with you, but I really would like to see you take this conversation down two roads, right? There's the youth in general, the stuff that I'm going to give you, but the stats I'm going to hit you with, you probably got your own stuff too, but just, you know, like the biggest distinction in terms of my questions for you is like, what is it like to work with, you know, when we talk about working with youth who are in sports, right? If that's your specialization area, how is that different? I'm gonna just hit you with one or two stats, but honey, I know you got the rest. It says that Black youth are 20% more likely to, I think I pointed this out earlier, experience mental health issues. Suicide rates is the second leading cause of death amongst Black youth between the ages 10 and 19. LGBTQ Black youth have a higher rate of depressive symptoms than their non-LGBTQ peers, and exposure to violence and discrimination contributes significantly to the mental health challenges faced by Black youth. So, you know, when you talk about how you helping Black youth, you feel inspired, you feel compelled to do it. Please share with us those experiences in terms of what you have seen, to the extent you can share, and some of the stigmas associated with it. And then also how, you know, is the work that you do distinctively different in terms of like some of the issues that our children face when we're dealing with children who are in sports? Is it different, or, you know, similar? What are we dealing with here?
Yeah. So here's the thing. The stigmas start at the top. So just like with everything, they start at the top. And I think we've heard before, and I know we'll hear more as the day goes on. There is a stigma around mental health in you know, communities of color. There is a stigma to talk about it, to really understand what depression is, anxiety is. I have literally talked with parents who, you know, say, like, I used to say, it's nothing wrong with you. You don't need to see nobody. You're not crazy. And so think about it. The home and parents most likely are the very first safe space for a child. That's what I've seen. They're the very first safe space. And if it is if the parent is under the mindset, you know, no, depression isn't, what you gotta be depressed for? You know, it's nothing to be depressed for. Or, you know, oh, just don't pay attention to what you see online. Oh, you know, if a child says they feel different, whether we agree or we don't, you know, here's the thing, like, are we being supportive? Right. And so when we think about depression, one of the things I see is a lot of times a gateway, as I call it, like if we think about gateway drugs, a gateway for depression is stress.
Yeah.
So some of the symptoms of stress is the definition of clinical symptoms of depression. And if we're not acknowledging that, and that's what I can see because of the stigma. Oh, you're okay. You got it easy. You don't have to pay bills. It's almost like diminishing what they go through. So when I do work with athletes, you know, and I have worked with youth that are not athletes, there's difference. The difference may be in terms of sports and what they get excited about. You know, one kid may get excited about sports and another one get excited about cars or that kind of thing, right? So the passions are different. But when you strip it down from what they do, just like many of us, we have similar challenges. It's just, it may show up different. And so an athlete may deal with performance anxiety, something I've seen, right? Getting nervous, what does this mean if I don't hit this expectation? Who am I going to let down? Because I've seen in my world where parents have, understandably so, college is a lot, right? But they've let the child know that college is a lot and almost makes it feel like it's their responsibility to earn a scholarship to get in, right? That's pressure for a young person who may not even know what they want to do. Yeah. And then if you flip it, say there's a youth who doesn't play sports, who maybe not college age, but academically they're expected to make certain grades, right? And they may be having challenges with a teacher or challenges in that subject, or challenges with their peers. Same kind of pressure, because the pressure is, I don't really care, figure it out. And so when you think about it, it starts at the top down. So the stigmas that we deal with as a community trickle down to our youth. And those stats are spot on. And one of the things is, I do some research with Child Mind Institute. Is a really big institute, that really puts out good information on mental health. And when you look at it, nearly 1 in 4 parents are concerned about their child's mental health. Nearly 1 in 4.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I also have a 15-year-old daughter. So one thing that I want to ask you is, once you identify what issues that they are struggling with, how do you build that rapport with them? And do you invite any other adults in, with their care, as far as their teachers, maybe their parents, maybe another trusted adult?
Yes. So a part of what I do, it just comes with what I do. It's education. I believe knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. And one of the things that kind of can keep us ignorant, respectfully, is that we don't kind of seek what is happening in the now, right? So I talk a lot to parents, not only parents, the whole village, whether that is the teachers, I'm around coaches, and supports. So I talk to them about how it looks. Okay, when I enjoy talking to the youth, because when you give them a space, they'll tell you what they thinking, you know what I mean? So just kind of seeing all right, they feel pressure because of X, Y, and Z. Not that it's right or it's wrong. It just is. So how can we alleviate the pressures? What strategies can we come up with? But one of the things that I'll tell parents a lot is, so as a parent, and I am a parent too, I have a 15-year-old and a 10-year-old. So what we can do is almost focus on the negative and what they're not doing. But catch, when's the last time you said, you a good kid? You really are good, or thank you for helping do this, because it was ingrained messaging that I'm not going to give you praise for something that you're supposed to do. We all like praise. It's nothing wrong. We walk around with affirmations. I am great. I am dope. God loves me, so it's nothing wrong with that. So it's really understanding if we're going to give correction, make sure that we also encourage and we uplift, because we're the ones that's planting the seeds. I say that's the same thing with the coaches. Yes, they have to coach, they have to look at these things, but make sure a coach may be the only positive in a kid's life. A teacher may be the only positive in a youth life, depending on the home situation. So making sure that there is definitely praise. There is definitely a chance to listen with and have them say what they feel.
Right. And you made a good point. I'm not going to give you praise for what you should be doing already. So I had to change my verbiage. I'm saying the same thing. I'm not going to pay you for cleaning up your room. However, I try to instill in my child that, when you grow up, no one's going to clean your room for you. So these are the things that I have to, that you have to do in order to just live every day. You have to clean your room. You have to make your bed. You have to wash your dishes. You have to go to school. You have to get good grades. But I also let her know that I appreciate her for doing those things and that I'm proud of her for keeping her room clean. So I had to kind of rephrase that. So you made a very good point there.
Mm-hmm.
𝗲𝗲𝗹,
I would usually too suggest, like, if say they do it and it don't have to be clean your room, but anything that, like, wow, this looks good in here. This is nice. Just think about when we get dressed and we get done that, we like when somebody say, okay, girl, you did it. So just kind of really that encouragement.
Yes.
And I really love what you said about stigma. When I pulled some of the stats for children, one of the things that it talks about for Black youth, that the stigma around mental health in the Black community often leads to underreporting and undertreatment of mental health issues amongst youth, right? And we talked, and Dr. Crawford touched on this previously, a little bit about poverty rates, lack of access to quality care, et cetera. But I want to talk a little bit around treatment, and then I have another follow-up question for you about cultural competency, right? Because that's what today is about. It's about us as Black experts and Black folks of excellence. We're highlighting that the stigmas, we're offering strategies and solutions, but we're also, because it's from the career coach perspective, I have to talk about the importance of representation. But when you keep talking about stigma and it leading to this underreporting, so these children become adults.
Yes.
Right. And when we talk about stigma, when we don't address these issues and I'm talking about whether it's mental health issues or even addressing the stigma around it, what's happening to these children as they become adults because of the stigma?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And one of the, I often educate about, most of the adults that I see, we have to go back to childhood in the beginning. We have to go back to the messaging. We have to go back to how we learn how to communicate. We have to go back to control, for instance. Sometimes people deal with control, right? But it could be a time where they felt like things were out of control. And so control became that much more important. And so that's the thing, like, youth become adults, and then we're going to address it. So one of the things that I'm passionate about is prevention in the youth. Like, let's start to talk about mental health, but let's make it fun. So mental wellness, we do PE in school, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and that introduced us to moving our bodies and doing all that stuff. And it would be great to see something that was dedicated to mental wellness, to understand stress points, to understand anxious points, to understand, because you're right. So when they become adults, we're going back to youth and talking about it.
So how do you promote the positive mental wellness and the resilience in the children that you coach?
I make it fun. So I always say this: one thing that a youth is going to have is a good time. We're going to have fun. I let them talk how they talk, to me. Every youth I encounter is respectful, because I come in, I respect them, I value their opinion. So that's one of the things, is we make it fun. We talk about, they also get educated in what things like control, power, manipulation, healthy relationships, depression, stress. We get educated on that. But it's also just a space. They have a space to say how they feel. For it, just giving you an example. So I work with a group of young men, and they wanted to talk about relationships. And one of the things they said, well, my parents always tell me girls is a distraction. And so they didn't really understand what that meant. Like, they kind of were like, if I have an okay relationship, there's nothing wrong. Like, how is that a distraction? So we broke it down. You know what I mean? So that's how it's really to get them to understand what these stigmatized words and all of these things mean and how it can work for them, and to be able to say, hey, it's okay. Like, Miss 𝗲𝗃 taught me about this. So if I go to college and I become an adult and I start to remember, I remember what stress looks like. I remember how it feels. I'm not ashamed to go and ask for help. And that's, how I work. I have fun with them. The other thing that I tell parents a lot is, make sure that you do not bring up a therapist or mental health in the midst of something's wrong and I can't help you, so you got to go talk to somebody. That is going to shut the youth down, shut them down. So that is one of the biggest strategies. I say, have these ongoing conversations, allow them to talk. When you see, they puff up their pride, it's natural. Talk them through it.
I love what you said about letting the kids talk the way that they talk, because that leads us to the next question, which really, when we talk about cultural competency and the importance of representation, right? So we just threw some stats out at Dr. Crawford that as a psychiatrist, I have to pull some stats for you might know better than me. As a psychiatrist, she represents 2% of already a small percentage of Black doctors, right? So when we talk about the importance of representation and allowing spaces for our children to be able to be themselves and feel some level of comfortability, how important is not just the work that you're doing, 𝗄𝗲𝗯, that's important, but it's also the kids seeing a face that looks like them. So how important do you feel that, from your experience, that connection in terms of, being able to relate to the kids and the importance of representation?
Connection is everything. It's everything from in every area. So that is huge. Being able to feel like that they want to be able to feel like you can understand them. You know what I mean? Without judgment. And even sometimes I as a mom and a therapist, I have to check myself and ask, like, is this what's going on with the youth? It may not be something that I've dealt with. So I have to ask, like, oh, so this is what y'all do? Like, and they'll say, yeah. Like, sharing locations with each other is a huge thing. Like, and so I had to get educated, because I was like, right, like, y'all actually like share. If you mad, you take it off. So like, but to understand like what they go through. So connection is important. Cultural, seeing the face, like, I mean, yours, somebody that you can identify with, is huge. We are doing better with therapists of color, but we have a long way to go. And our regulations is that we have to have certain requirements and everything to hold a license. And so you see that discrepancy just because you see the discrepancy of standardized tests, because there's a standardized test that come in that. The education barrier, all of that plays a part into our profession. But it is important. My practice, I would say 90% of the clients come because they want to be connected to a Black therapist. And thank God we have a team of therapists that, are there. But it is very important. They want to, be able to now meet with somebody who can understand some of the history, some of the background, some of the cultural ways, the spiritual ways. They want to be able to identify.
And I guess we might have to transition because we're going a little bit longer here. Okay. Here's my thing. You came on and you said, okay, I am a Christian counselor, right? What if I am not religious and are you still a safe space for me?
Yes.
So how do you approach that when it's already a stigma? Because not everybody is like religious, right? But there's always this, thing like, okay, I'm a Christian counselor. I have these beliefs. Do you have patients who come to you with necessarily like, I don't really, not about the religious aspect, I just want the counsel. And how do you handle that to make them feel comfortable?
Well, we meet in our philosophy is client-centered, patient first. And so we meet people where they are. That the one thing about me is I like for clients to know me. So my faith is important to me. Right. But when we are working, we identify what is important to you. And one of the things is lead with love. That is the foundation for everything. And so I lead with love in a way that is like, what is important to you, and we're going to work on the things that you want to work on, not, what I want to do. And so for me, the connection, it goes far beyond that, because I'm also a Black woman. I also have kids. I also was born in the city. So there's so many different things that we can connect on. But I lead with love, and that's being patient and kind and understanding and respectful of what you want to do and your choices, because I am just a representative of light. And so that's how I choose to lead.
Yeah, I love that, because the reason why I asked that question is because I mean, I have seen therapists before, right? And I just always ask that question, like, if I say, okay, hey, here's my approach, you know, in what I'm looking for from in a therapist, right? It definitely did not stop me, because I know Angela, she promotes herself as a Christian coach. My therapist would always just pray for me in the very beginning of our sessions. And I mean, it was just like, okay, you know what I'm saying? I always had respect for it. Now I'm Christian, but I mean, I just want to make sure that people understand that just because somebody comes to you, just because you're saying, okay, I'm a Christian counselor or anything like that, it definitely does not take away from the fact that you're open and you're a safe space for any and everybody, right? And being able to connect with everybody and be that safe space. It doesn't matter what your religion, your culture, or your background. It just so happens, doesn't just so happen that the key with the most of your clients are African American just by nature, but it doesn't keep you from seeing everybody, right? You're engaging everybody, all backgrounds, cultures, and religions. Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that after this, Angela and I, we're gonna have just a quick powwow and just do some highlights of some of the conversations. Then we're gonna bring on our next guest. Before I do that, I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to do a quick plug for your business. And of course, we'll come back. You're gonna be at the round table, right? We'll come back. Oh, yeah. And if you can't, we understand. We'll come back and we're gonna do that shameless plug, right? But tell us what you got coming up, what's happening with you. And your girl Sasha is cheering for you in the chat.
Support, it takes a village. So people can connect with me and my practice is Safe Roots. That is www.saferootcounseling.com. I always tell everybody I love to connect with everyone on the socials. So I am on Facebook and Instagram, 𝗄𝗲𝗹𝗹. You can look me up, find me. But yeah, under Safe Roots is the Elite Mindset Academy. Like I said, we work with student athletes. So we are here really to promote mental wealth, really just becoming wealthy in your mind, living out the life that God has called you to live, and doing it while you can have fun. So that is me. You can check me out there if you have any questions, want to connect with me. I'm always looking to connect.
I really, really, absolutely love the fact that not only are you a safe space, I like what you said about letting kids be be themselves. They don't have to come around you faking the funk, right? It's just like keep it real. And come to Miss Davis and you can spill all your guts, and she is a safe space for you, no matter your background and your experiences. Angela, did you want to say anything to wrap this up? You're on mute. Still on mute, but we're going to keep going. 𝗄𝗲𝗹𝗯𝗃𝗲𝗹, I want to say thank you for sharing your experiences with us. I mean, it's so important for us as Black professionals to take these moments to make sure that we're highlighting some of the issues in our community. And when we have these special conversations centered around children, right? Children become adults. So when we talk about mental health and, what's happening, remember that stigma that 𝗄𝗲𝗹𝗯𝗃𝗲𝗹 kept talking about, right? Stigmas and applying all that stuff. People grow up and they bring that stuff into adulthood, right? Hurt people. And so we got to give kids an opportunity to address their issues and treat them as humans and respect their feelings. You want to say any words to wrap up, 𝗄𝗲𝗹𝗯𝗃𝗲𝗹, before I go on to my next guest?
Thank you for having me. I look forward to hearing all the rest of the guests. I'll be having y'all in my ear pod as we move forward. But thank you guys for having me. It was a pleasure. We need this.
Yes, we do. Angela, let me see. Can we hear you? You want to do a quick test? Still on mute. Okay, so we're going to keep going. And go to our next guest. All right, we're going to keep the conversation going. And I'm so excited to have our next guest on, because we've talked about everything from the general stigma of Black mental health, right? And then we talked specifically about children. But I want to make sure that we also, because there's always something for women, right? There's always something for us as women. The conversation that I was going, we are women leading this initiative. And it's really important for the brothers to be able to have a place in a space. So let me just do a quick sound check. Brother George, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. And Angela, just because of the technical difficulties, you may want to come out, log back in, okay? And then we'll keep it going, okay? So, Angela, George, you're good. I'll carry the conversation with us, okay? And so it's really important for us to really take time to recognize brothers and some of the challenges that they have. So I want to just quickly introduce Mr. George Brooks. He's a mental health advocate, CEO, and life coach. He is his advocacy area. And I see this brother working when we trying to, look in those groups trying to get put on shows and stuff. This brother show up on every post like, hey, I'm speaking on Black mental health. And I just happened to see one of his posts. It wasn't even on mine, but I said, I'm gonna get that brother to speak at this event because you are hungry for this, and being able to support Black men and mental health and the advocacy work that you do. So I want to turn this over to you to be able to introduce yourself and talk about, we started the conversation off with our passion behind our careers, but, engaging us on Black mental health and health disparities associated with Black men.
Yes. Well, good morning. Thanks for having me be a part of this wonderful event. Like I said, good morning to everyone out there. But this will be less of a speech and more of a conversation because I think in dealing with Black male mental health, we're not having enough conversations. We're having a lot of people talking at each other, but not a lot of dialogue that's really going to kind of break down the barriers of the things that are keeping us as Black men from pursuing our mental health. Because at the end of the day, if for no other reason, we need to change the stigma and the idea and our approach toward our mental health, because if nothing else is keeping us broke. So my journey with mental health and what got me into my career, I'm the CEO and founder of my own nonprofit, Meta Association. It was founded about 6 years ago. We deal with Black male mental health, fighting recidivism, and promoting healthy fatherhood. And we've done community programs over the years, food drive once during COVID. We're also working on several programs for this year. So we focus mainly on Black male mental health. And that came from me having my own mental health issues since about the age of 7. And it's been a lifelong thing, raising a young Black male with his own mental health issues has been a challenge. So this is my passion. This is my career. I'm also in recovery from a 10-year cocaine addiction. So I'm transparent about everything just for the simple fact I want people to really start addressing those issues. And this event is about also promoting us taking better care of ourselves. Systematically, we've been taught not to. Back during slavery, it's not like we had a health plan. It's not as though we were treated as chattel, as property. So our health was the last thing that anyone was ever concerned with. And that is carried down generationally in terms of how we approach our health. We've also been I don't want to say victim, but the recipient of systematic racism in terms of not promoting having healthy diets and not promoting, in fact, by promoting food deserts in our community. So our overall general attitude toward health could use a long way to go. So you transpose the stigma of mental health on top of that, which is something that even that all cultures have stigmatized and tried to hide over many, many decades. Now, I think that one of the things that makes Black men unique in terms of addressing our mental health is that we have very unique stressors that no other culture in this world, I believe, has. Where COVID was more of a prompt for general America, white America, whatever, or the majority. One of our triggers was George Floyd. Over the past few years, we've had events like that have acted as unique stressors in terms of our mental and emotional health and dealing with society. You compound that with COVID, which affected everyone, and you compound that with someone like me who has a diagnosable mental condition, and you could have a recipe for disaster if their health care is not advocated for and addressed. So let's talk about a couple of the barriers in terms of Black men addressing their mental health. The main one is the fact that it's stigmatized. It's seen as a weakness. It's seen as a flaw. It's seen as something you didn't pray hard enough to get rid of. Wow. And that's really the first thing we shoot ourselves in the foot about, because there has to be a multi-tiered approach to recovery. And if you're dealing with a mental health issue, it's no different. I have diabetes and a heart condition. I have to manage that. If I don't take my insulin, I'm going to be ill, the same way that if I don't take my bipolar meds, I'm going to be ill. And we see mental health, but we don't always see the health aspect of it.
Can I just commend you, first of all, brother, for just like Sasha said, the transparency, right? Because I think that so much of, in our own communities, we feel like we talk a lot about being the strong Black woman, but we also got to address being the strong Black man, right? Being able to carry that in this stigma that you can't admit, like, hey, I'm having this problem, I'm struggling with this. Just as it's a struggle for us sisters trying to be the strong Black woman, there is this burden of trying to be the strong Black man as well. And so I would just say, as a culture, to your point, we have to be open and willing to have these type of discussions that are not easy. And I love, like you said, you're getting ready to transition into this discussion on a multi-tiered approach, but it's just the transparency for me to really be able to say, like, hey, this is happening. Angela, are you good and back? I can hear you.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So any comments to what this brother is sharing with us so far?
Listen, I just appreciate your journey and your willingness to share journey. And one of the things I want to know is what helped you to overcome your addiction, and what has prompted you now help others.
What really prompted me was hitting rock bottom. I've hit it a couple times. Hit it again, never know. But just really forming a sense of self, discovering and walking with my faith in God. Well, if you're a non-believer, that's fine too. But that's what's been helpful and beneficial to me, and that's really what motivates me to help other people, is because I've been there. Yeah. And all we are given in our life is our testimony. So I'm trying to use mine to help other people, help heal myself, and try to make sure that other people don't go through the same thing that I had to.
Okay.
Yeah, so you talked about a multi-tiered approach. Let me, I got to keep throwing these statistics in here. So I think that let me throw those in before you even get to your multi-tiered approach, which is, the strategy, because you got so much to talk about, right? So it says Black men are 20% more likely to report serious psychological distress compared to white men. And again, when I talked about this thing earlier, is that, we're dealing as a culture, as a people, when a lot of times when people are having this conversation about stress and psychological health, you talk about surface level stuff. Like, I'm not saying it's surface level to dismiss it, but people talk about surface level stuff like, oh my God, I'm stressed because I can't pay the bills. I'm stressed. We deal with that stress too. We deal with that stress, but we also dealing with systematic stress. It's the stuff that you don't see, right? Because we know, I said this morning on one of my Facebook posts, sometimes we get a seat at the table, but we can't eat, and people let us know that systematically, right, by some of the things that they do. So we're dealing with that type of stress. So we're dealing with internalized stress because of the PTSD of racism and systematic things that have been put in place to make sure that we don't progress. And we internalize that, and that's added to what we already are dealing with. So it says Black men are less likely to seek mental health treatment than their white counterparts. And in the U.S., Black men are more likely to experience chronic PTSD than any other racial or ethnic group. I want to just get these other 2 points in too, because all of it plays into what you just said. And that's why, brother, we appreciate your transparency and we appreciate your passion for what you're doing, right? Because it's not, if I get another platform where I can have you on, you're going to be back. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Social economic factors, stigma surrounding mental health, and lack of access to culturally competent. We mentioned this with 𝗄𝗲𝗹𝗶 and Dr. Crawford. And after you get done talking, I got that question for you about you having access to people who look like you for the type of care you need. They contribute to disparities in mental health and outcome for Black men. And then, Black men have higher rates of undiagnosed mental health conditions compared to other groups. So when we talk about that multi-tiered approach you mentioned, how do you take all of these stats and information that I'm giving you and apply that to that multi-tiered approach and strategy that you're talking about?
You look at the approaches that were implemented that yielded those results. You try to delve more into what's worked and what hasn't worked, and you lean more toward things that I think are going to be more unique in terms of recovery, because our recovery is going to be individual. It's going to be unique to the person. It's going to be unique day by day according to the individual. So recovery is a very broad general term, but I think I found, at least for me personally, a multi-tiered approach that was really beneficial. The first was the physical. My physical health had deteriorated to that point. Helped me, well, it's complicated, but it deteriorated to a point where I needed to address it. The next was spiritual. I began to really discover my relationship with God. I found great benefit in the way that I learned to worship and surround myself with different people. And that made a huge difference. It was also in terms of therapy. Oftentimes, we as Black men ignore therapy. I've been in therapy for 6 years with Dr. 𝗄𝗲𝗃𝗃, and it has saved my life. And we have to get over the stigma of feeling like I'm not telling a stranger my business when every week we go to the barbershop or the dog track and we tell our homies everything.
Can I stop you there? Can I stop you there? Because
Right.
I want you, Jules, if you listen, I want you to put this on a video clip. This brother said we'll go to the barbershop and tell them all our business. But then when we get ready when we need to see a mental therapist, a health therapist, we can't do that. We can't do that. We don't want to tell a stranger our business. Isn't that something? That's really
is something. I never thought about that. That is a
Right.
very statement.
Yeah, and you know, it's really because of that stigma that we have toward mental illness. We still think of it as a weakness. And you know, if you took my brain and did a CT scan, and you took someone without bipolarism that doesn't show any signs of bipolarism, and do a scan of their brain, it's going to look different because it's a chemical imbalance. It's not just something that is abstract of one's mind or hallucinatory or anything like that. Your blood work's going to be different sometimes. Much of that due to medication, and that's another tenet that I stand upon in terms of recovery, is that if you have to take medication, just take your medication. Medication is too stigmatized in this country, just as healthcare is for us as Black folks anyway, because most of us will show symptoms of high blood pressure or have it diagnosed and won't go to the doctor, or will continue to eat and exercise and live in ways that are going to be detrimental to our condition. So in terms of healthcare, there's a cynicism toward healthcare in general in this country. There's an apathy toward healthcare, and there's a mistrust of healthcare. But you know, now that we have the advent of the internet and access to information, there's no excuse for that. For us as diaspora, as Black people, not to explore and look into our mental health, especially as men, would be trifling and lazy, and it's keeping us broke. So we really need to get over the stigma. And to get back to the point of one of the tenets of recovery, it's therapy. We have to not be afraid to talk about it, because there are places where it's confidential to discuss it. It's dietary, is what you eat. Serotonin is generated mostly in the gut, so we need to pay more attention to what we take in. And it's also in terms of social media, our social diet, in terms of the kind of posts we go to, the kind of things we consume. I noticed that a lot of times my mood may change, or just karma and just my vibe may change based on what I'm watching. So if I notice I'm feeling a certain way mentally right now, let me look at what I'm watching. And we as Black men really need to start paying attention to those kind of things and discussing them, even if it's in a confidential venue, because there are things that through me and my nonprofit Meta Association, we're working on venues for Black men to where we can be private and discuss our things, because us not addressing it is affecting our relationship with our women, children, and communities as well. Because we have a lot that we have to deal with that is unique, and we have to heal. But you can't do that. You know, we have to look at it like this. We have to look at it in terms of a wound. And just because you don't see the wound, don't know, that doesn't mean I'm not bleeding. And that's how we have to look at our mental health. Just because it's not something that we can maybe even conceptualize, whether it's because it's just we can't wrap our minds around it, or because we've been raised that way due to religion, due to the societal norms or things like that. We have to understand that it's real. And we have to understand that people are hurting it, despite us not seeing the wound, despite it not being visible. Trauma is real, and we've endured trauma as well. So we really have to do this. And my call to action is for people to just continue to have these discussions, continue to support your nonprofits that support Black male mental health, like mine, Meta Association. Continue to look into yourself, and if you're dealing with a mental illness or something that you feel is overburdening you emotionally, seek help for it. There are many organizations. There are many people. Seek out your church, work on yourself, improve yourself, try to find happiness and balance in your life, whether you're living with a mental illness or not. Try to treat other people well. But we as Black men, I don't want to say we have a long way to go, because I don't want to make it seem like we're still trudging along as a diaspora, because I think we're all sort of sick of that. But I think I want to look at Black men as having a lot of growth to do.
And this has been
I like to speak of it as growth. I like to speak of it as expansion. Speak of our people being in ascension, but it's got to start with our health first. So
let me tell you something, brother. This ain't the last conversation we're gonna have, because I'm just mesmerized by, which I think we need to have more advocates like you speaking out on behalf of the brothers, right? Because everything you said was real. We're gonna transition the conversation, but this is not the last time we're gonna speak. You're gonna be back for the round table, right? And then we're gonna have
I will be back.
Have your podcast to talk about this more, right? Because it is something that needs to be addressed. Let me ask you this question. One quick final plug for your business. You'll get to do your shameless plug in the round table. But do you have any events that are popping up that you just want to quickly put on the radar for us?
I'm doing a lot of public speaking, so I'm available for that. I've got a couple of events coming up. I'm speaking at the Future Millionaires Conference in the DFW next week on March 2nd. I'm also work in the wrestling business as a producer. We've got an event coming up at the Elks Lodge on Lowwater in the DFW on March 2nd. My nonprofit Meta Association will have a new site launching in the next few days at metaassociation.org. So if you're interested in collaborating with me personally, my nonprofit, or have me come speak, you can reach me at 901-631-4300.
All right, and we make sure you say all that again. Thank you so much, Brother George Brooks. Thank you again for talking about Black mental health. All right, so we'll see you back at the panel. So we're going to transition this conversation, Angela, because we have spent the first hour here talking about Black mental health and some of the challenges within our communities. And so I'm going to tell you guys the reason why we launched this event in the first place. It was November, and I said to myself, okay, I'm building out this platform for WORxK Solutions. I'm transitioning to social impact. My background is a health educator, but I need to make sure that I'm doing stuff also as I build a platform, and God blesses me to do that. How can I use this platform to make a change in my own community? And I was sitting there, and I was in December, I was watching on the news a young girl, her name was a young lady. Let me make sure I say this properly, because I done said it in all my stuff. She don't know me personally, but I'm just making sure I speak up about it. Young lady, Brittany Watts, who for me, you know, Angela is my best friend, knows I've had some issues with fertility in the past, and it's not something that I've openly spoken about. But in December, when I was watching the news, I was watching this story about Brittany Watts, who was basically told that her baby she basically was told she had to carry a corpse to term. So she carried the baby to term. It was stillborn in the toilet. She was so shocked. I mean, imagine having to carry this a corpse to term. Shocked. She has the baby, has PTSD, had a baby in the toilet. She goes to the hospital. She gets to the hospital. The nurse flips the story and calls the police. And when you listen to the video of what the nurse told the police, she totally flips the story. This young lady is arrested for tampering with a corpse of a stillborn baby. Now, eventually they dropped the charge, but I cannot imagine the trauma that she went through. And I said, okay, I got to do something, right? Because it doesn't matter if you're pro-life or pro-choice. It's really about us treating people fairly, right? And you know, she was lied on, and she ends up in prison dealing with more trauma. And that's what we see all these racial disparities and these things that we talk about. And so I'm going to bring on this next guest. Angela, do you have anything you want to add to that? I'm going to bring on our next guest, Brittany, who really specializes in dealing with Black maternal health. And she did her research into, I think I put out 15,000 calls for people to help me with this specific topic, and could not find anybody. But I just want to give a shout out to my friend Indira, who connected me with her sister. And Brittany's going to come on and talk to us about these issues.
All right. I'm just excited to hear what Dr. Brittany is going to tell us about this topic.
All right. So I'm going to add her to the stage right now. Brittany, we're so excited to have you on. You see, I gave you a whole monologue. Dr. Brittany K, she's a family nurse practitioner and health equity advocate. Brittany is going to really talk to us about Black maternal health. You heard the reason why I really decided to organize this event. And again, it's not about a political statement, pro-life or pro-choice. It's about treating people with respect. That was racist. I mean, it was racism, right? You know, you literally, you can hear the videotape where the nurse calls and literally flips the story on this young lady, and she ended up in jail. Trauma on top of trauma. So with that, let's jump in. Brittany, you tell us a little bit about yourself, what inspired you to get into this line of work, and then, you know, honey, just start sharing with us the facts about Black maternal health.
All right. Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Taylor, and thank you, Coach Angela, for having me. I'm very excited to be here. Black maternal health has been something that I've been passionate about for years. As a RN, I worked high-risk maternity care, and 90% of my patients looked like me. And our patients were sick. I mean, many patients who passed away, patients who, were there long-term, their babies were in the NICU. So it was just something that sparked a passion in me. Furthermore, I had my own daughter, and I remember feeling really unsafe with my nurses. I actually did not feel safe until after I had my baby, and there were nurses who looked like me who were taking care of me. So it was a long period of time where I didn't feel safe. And I was a nurse at the time. And so I was very uncomfortable. And then finally, when I had someone who came in looking like me, I felt a sense of relief. And I was like, okay, I'm going to be all right. Someone looks like me. They're going to take care of me. I'm going to be safe here. And so just over the years of encountering patients and listening to patients' stories, 𝗄𝗲𝗹𝗯𝗲𝗶 Johnson, who is Judge Hatchett's daughter-in-law who passed away several years ago, her story really impacted me. You know, here's this professional woman who, had no real comorbidities, and she passed away because the healthcare providers did not listen to her because of unconscious bias. And that's a lot of what the research is telling us now that affects Black maternal health and the mortality rates. We do know that the mortality rates for African-American women and non-Hispanic Black women are 3 times that of their white counterparts. And that the statistics are staggering, and they just continue to increase. In fact, since 2018, the statistics have increased almost 3 times across the board for the entire country, but they continue to be higher for Black patients. So, we do know that racial bias has a huge impact on our patients' care and their health. And on top of that, Black women and African-American people, we tend to have more comorbidities. We're more likely to have pre-existing cardiovascular disorders. We're more likely to experience adverse pregnancy outcomes that then put us at risk for cardiovascular outcomes and cardiovascular disease. So, this is definitely an issue that we need to combat. It's not going to take anyone else to do it. We have to do it as a community. We have to combat this ourselves.
Yeah, Dr. Jeffrey is going to come on a little bit later to talking to us about, the importance of advocacy, right, and being able to speak up for yourself. But I want to go back to what you said about Judge Hatchett's daughter. I totally forgot about that story. And one of the things I mentioned earlier, because it literally has stuck with me, is my own. I'll share my experience really quick, right? And I don't speak publicly about it, but 10 years ago when I was pregnant, I remember going. Here I am, a healthcare provider and educator. I go to the emergency room. They literally look at me and go, "You're having a miscarriage." Like, I knew that I was having a miscarriage. They knew I was having a miscarriage. Left me in the emergency room lobby for 4 or 5 hours. Literally, I went there at 8. I took some Tylenol with codeine that I just had on my shelf, right? Because I was in so much pain. They didn't bother to see me. They literally just took my bottle and said, "You're having a miscarriage. There ain't nothing we can do." It just left me sitting there in the lobby. I passed out and woke up at 1 o'clock a.m. and walked out of the hospital and just went home and finished having a miscarriage. Just talk about trauma, about having your feelings dismissed, the pain. When we talk about pain tolerance and all those things, right? That's just something I kept privately, carried it with me. I'm just like, now here I am, an educated Black woman. I got insurance. I go to the emergency room. They look at me and go, boom, you having a miscarriage. Something they already knew because I've been back and forth with the doctor, but then just left me out there in the lobby for 4 or 5 hours with nothing. And I literally was out there. Didn't nobody even check on me? I was passed out. Nobody even checked on me. So when we talk about, I think about Serena Williams. You heard me bring that up earlier. Like, right now, she a person with much more money than me. And she's telling them like, hey, I'm in pain, And like, literally, she's being ignored. So you did research in your dissertation around Black women and post-traumatic stress syndrome. And I want you to talk a little bit about that and to include, the build up to that, because it ain't just when we have the kids, right? It's the experience of being in this system. When you got a young lady being charged with tampering with the corpse for having a baby that they knew that was going to pass away, and literally the nurse literally flips the story. You know, when we're dealing with systematic issues, I want you to speak to that and you know, what inspired you to do that research and, you know, everything, girl. Just tell us.
All right. So yeah, so childbirth-related post-traumatic stress disorder is an emerging topic in this country. It's very popular in Europe and other developed countries, and it's starting to get more traction here now. So we do know about 9% of women who report symptoms do experience some sort of childbirth-related post-traumatic stress disorder. So typically, you know, when a woman goes to the doctor after having a baby, they do a depression screening, right? But they don't do any screening for PTSD. And so what we found is that patients who experience difficult labors, difficult pregnancies, you know, they may feel like they're going to pass away or their child's going to pass away. They have significant PTSD that translate further on. So some of the consequences of childbirth-related PTSD is inability to breastfeed. So low breastfeeding rates. And we already know that as African-American women, we have lower breastfeeding rates than white women, right? In addition to that, there may be comorbidity with substance abuse. Many women have, issues in terms of their interpersonal relationships with their spouses. Many choose not to have further children because they're so afraid of having babies. I've had many patients come in and say to me, you know, I really love my child, but I'm definitely afraid of having another baby. Or I've had a patient who came in, she had many, many health issues during her pregnancy, and she said, this is traumatic. You know, I wanted to enjoy this pregnancy and I am traumatized. I never want to do this again. And this is someone who is in her 20s, who has her whole life ahead of her. And this is a terrible experience for her and she's traumatized. And so we do know that postpartum depression as well as postpartum PTSD or childbirth-related PTSD has huge impacts on our patients and our community. And so I did a dissertation on this and I found that you know, one participant actually told me, she said, you know what, everything you're asking me now is what I experienced with my first child. And I almost didn't come back to have another baby. And then I had, you know, another patient who actually tested positive for CBPTSD, and we referred her to counseling as well as medication therapy, different avenues, as well as support groups that we referred her to. So it's definitely something that's emerging. I think that within our community, we have more PTSD than we're willing to discuss, what we've talked about before. There's a stigma behind it. We don't want to talk about our feelings or what it is. And, you know, the other thing to think about is that Black women as a whole were used as breeders, right? So, you know, that's another trauma that I think is ingrained within our community, is something that we're trying to navigate still.
Yeah, I want to point out, like, I'm a historian, right? So when I'm researching my own family history, I looked on Ancestry. I saw the notes that on my grandmother's side, my father's grandmother, great, back in history, is literally they had annotated she's a breeder, like a human, being used to breed other humans to sell, and people like the post-traumatic stress of this stuff is literally passed down to us. When we talk about the experiences of Black women, and Angela, you feel free to jump in here because, I remember when Angela and I were younger, she used to go, I want to have 6 kids. And I was like, hey, I don't want to have none. I just want a Mercedes. So, now you got one child that's both our child, right? My niece and Pooh. But when you talk about the experiences of, and Brittany, and including yourself, Angela, of Black women in childbirth, what is the experience, the system experience that impacted the PTSD?
So what we're finding is that patients aren't having enough information from their providers. So we do know in maternity health, and especially in labor delivery, things happen quickly. And in fact, this is something that I discuss with my patients pretty frequently. Things change quickly, and so we may have to intervene quickly. And so patients often feel like they're not getting the information that they need. They're not being told what's happening, what we're doing to your body, right, and what the outcomes could be. And so that is something that definitely contributes to PTSD for sure. In addition to that is not having, and we've talked about this also today, not having trust in your provider, right? If you don't trust your provider, you're definitely gonna, you're definitely at risk for developing PTSD. And so some of the things that I tell my patients are, I give them some cues on informed consent questions. So one example of that may be, if we don't do this intervention right now, what could happen? What happens if we wait a day, an hour, 30 minutes? What happens if we don't do this intervention at all? Okay, so those are things that I empower my patients to really ask their provider so that they have the best information and they can make informed consent decision with their healthcare provider.
Dr. Brittany, this is I never really thought about. And I'm sitting here listening to you and I'm thinking about my own experience. And like Dr. Kristy said earlier, I wanted 4, 5, 6 kids. And I think that PTSD can even come even prior to you even having a baby. So the further along I got in life, the more I was like, maybe I don't want to bring a child in. So then when I did get pregnant, I didn't want to have the baby. And I was like, don't put the baby on me. But no one ever asked me why I felt like don't put the baby on me, before you wipe the baby off, or how I feel about the child that I'm carrying in my stomach. So this is a very good topic. This is very informative. The PTSD is very real, and I haven't had another child since.
Yep, me either.
I know for me, after that experience of having to drug my own self and passing out in an emergency room, I think one of my greatest fears is to get pregnant and have another miscarriage. Mainly because I mean, there's people that have miscarriages all the time, right? But just because I just cannot ever see myself taking my body through that experience again, because I just literally had no help, literally, just being left there. And I think that as Black women, and we're going to get ready to transition to our next guest because it builds into this topic that you are discussing, right? It's us learning to self-advocate, learning to speak up for ourselves. But I always say, even as an educator, right, I can't ask what I don't understand. So it's like people will say, ask questions about stuff, but sometimes we don't even know what to ask if I don't know what to ask. And that's why the internet is accessible. And so, you can, but we can't just even assume that sometimes people will just jump on the internet. Brittany, I want to know anything else you want to add, but I also want to give you, I see that you have in the background is Black Maternal Health Week. So I want to make sure I give you an opportunity to plug it and make sure that when you come back through for the panel that you do a shameless plug of it, right? Because why is it? Because, speaking of Black women, what do I ask when I don't know what to ask? How can we just, the solution to this is not as simple as just educate, right? It's like, you can't just assume that everybody has the same access to that, right? So let me let you wrap up this discussion by responding to that and doing, sharing, what do you have coming up with this Black Maternal Health Week?
Sure. So the first thing that I would say is make sure that, one, you know about your health. Okay, that is vitally important. The other thing is your support people, your family, your friends, your significant other, they need to know about your health as well. They need to, so if at any point you're incapacitated or you're not able to make the decisions on your own, you have someone there who can speak up for you, okay? The other thing is seek out, providers, organizations that recognize that there is unconscious bias and have a strategic plan to combat unconscious bias within their healthcare system. Obviously looking for midwives or providers of color. We do know the statistics say that, patients have better outcomes in maternal health when they have providers who look like them. So seeking those out are really important. And then just, supporting the initiatives that are coming out. Black Maternal Health Week is something that happens every year. There are many different organizations that put out different conferences and they plug things. So it's April 11th through the 17th every year. There's plenty of places that you can look for this information. Black Midwives Alliance. 𝗲𝗏𝗯𝗃 Moms is the husband of Judge Hatchett's daughter-in-law. He is advocating and doing lots of things in the political realm as well. So I just really encourage you to look up those things. Follow me on Instagram, Single Mom Mess. I post things all the time from American College of Obstetrics and Gynecologists, the American College of Nurse Midwives, as well as Black Midwives Alliance. I put lots of information on there and look for some new things coming up soon. I'm not going to plug them just yet, but there's some things coming in the future from me.
Well, all of these guests, we want to make sure we have an opportunity to offer you an opportunity to come on. Everybody who's speaking today, we want to make sure we offer you an opportunity to come on the podcast, right? And so you'll be able to plug it there. Angela, look, you wanted to say something before we move on to our next guest?
No, I just appreciate all the work that you're doing to spread awareness for Black women.
Yes, sister, because I had to pray for you. I had to go through the store. I think I inboxed everybody and their mama. And it's crazy, right? Because I know all of these nurses. And I'm just like, I cannot find somebody to speak on Black. And you, the perfect fit, because the research that you did, right? It really shows, like, hey, we got all of these disparities happening. There's even before you get to the PhD, what about all the things that led to the PhD, all the systematic issues that led to the trauma that a Black woman may be feeling. As Sasha pointed out, right? We feel like we are not being heard. We are being disregarded, right? I could go on and on for another 30 minutes about this, but I got to get to the next guest. But this is why this event like this is important today, right? Because, we got to hear us first. Because when we hear ourselves as a collective, then we can speak up and advocate as a collective. So, Brittany, thank you for being on today. I'm going to bring on my next guest, Dr. Ann Hester, and she's going to continue that great discussion that we're building upon. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, Angela, I'm so excited today because we've had a lot of great guests coming on and sharing their experiences with us. And so I'm going to let you introduce the next guest. Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. So I'm really excited. So go ahead.
I have Dr. Ann Hester. She is an accomplished physician and an author. So we're going to let her go ahead and tell us what she has for us today.
Good morning, ladies. So happy to be here. How are you?
Thank you so much.
So essentially, I am an internal medicine physician by training. The author of Patient Empowerment 101, More Than a Book. It's an adventure. I'm a soon-to-be health coach in a few weeks. We'll be taking people through some things that will teach them how to prevent, treat, and reverse diseases. I created patientworld.net, which is an on-demand platform where people can go to sign up to take a variety of courses. There are other things, but that's enough for now.
So, Dr. Hester, can you just tell us a little bit? Because I keep getting this thing because people are like, hey, Dr. Taylor, you are saying you're a career coach, but people get, I am a health educator. So it's great to utilize this platform that God has blessed us to be able to do things that are impactful for our community, right? And so this thing when we're highlighting Black excellence during Black History Month, this platform has been so important. You and I have had a lot of back and forth conversations, and I just want to really you to just make sure that you are sharing, what inspired and motivated you to go down the career path that you went. And I want to move. You heard an opportunity to hear all of the guests today, right? And you really are the culminating point of when we talk about hearing all of these needs and listening to what's happening in our community about self-advocacy and learning to speak up. And Brittany said a few buzzwords that I need to make sure I explain to the audience when we get this discussion. You can explain the unconscious bias, those things that we may be dealing with that we may not even recognize. Because I'm gonna tell you, like the average everyday person, they're not gonna know what unconscious bias is, right? Like as healthcare providers, we know, and I teach these courses on cultural competency. But I would love for you to just explain, what inspired you to get into your career and to go in this direction of self-advocacy for patients, and patients speaking up for themselves.
Certainly. My father was the first African-American physician in Evansville, Indiana. And he did so much when he died, they renamed the Evansville Community Center, the C.K. Newsom Center. When I was growing up, people would always come up to me, hey, your daddy did this, your daddy did that. Because of Dad, the schools were integrated in Evansville. And so he was a real pioneer dealing with the Black community and healthcare. So that's how the ball started rolling. Now, as I went to medical school, I remember being a third-year medical student, seeing a lady with a mass about this big on the breast, the left breast, draining pus. I was a student thinking, you have breast cancer. It's too late to cure you. I didn't say that to her, but you just see things over and over and over. And when I was a third-year student, when we had time to relax, we weren't studying, My colleagues were out partying, doing other things. I was writing my first book, Bridging the Gap: An African American Guide to Health and Self-Empowerment, because I saw so much unnecessary suffering and death. It was horrific. And so my entire career, I have been about empowering people to take the next step. We don't have to suffer and die unnecessarily. 4 out of 5 visits to the doctor are due to conditions that are treatable, preventable, and reversible, and related to lifestyle choices. And so we need to understand the role that we play. Certainly doing these things is not going to prevent everybody from becoming a diabetic. It's not going to prevent all heart attacks. But we know that millions of people die every year from something that is preventable, treatable, or reversible. And so we need to educate ourselves. We're looking at a shortage of 124,000 doctors in 10 years. If you add on the currently unmet needs in rural America and certain urban communities, then it's 180,400 doctors short in 10 years. How are you going to get in to see a doctor? How are you going to be able to take care of yourself and your family? So we need to be proactive and think now, do those things so we are healthier. So when this medical tsunami hits in full force, it's not going to mean quite as much that we may not be able to get in to see a doctor for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 months, and we may have 3 to 4 minutes face to face with the doctor.
Yeah, I remember doing some research when I was just working in just general healthcare. I don't know if I was like working on my dissertation. I can't remember because it's been so long ago. But and when I talk to my students now, it seems like that this really has not changed in terms of when we talk about the business operation side of healthcare. On average, a patient is only going to see a doctor for about 7 minutes. You might have those doctors that spend the full 30 minutes are able to do so. But when we talk about if your appointment is like a 30-minute slot, right? We have this. It's almost like a factor where we get you into. You see the medical technician. You might see, to get your vitals and all those things that you need to do to get you in the room. So that by the time you get to the doctor, they literally can just, it's in and out. It's very rare am I seeing these days of doctors. Some people might have time, but it just depends on the reimbursement rates of the whole thing, right? You gotta have a system because healthcare is a business. And people forget that, right? So it's like I'm mad because I'm not getting seen. Mm-hmm. Just because it's a business, and it's like I hate that in terms of like that sometimes we miss it, but I hate that it's that way, but it is that way. So to your point of right, like how do we know that this is a challenge? I know Angela mentioned earlier, and I really want to speak to that, Angela, about some of this being genetics, and to your point, Dr. Hester, being lifestyle. When we talk about access and how we operate, let's speak to that piece first, right? As a business, Angela, what has been your experience as somebody who's still working as a nurse in the business and administrator?
So yes, it is a business, and most healthcare providers, they don't really work for themselves. A lot of them, there are a lot that work for themselves, especially if you have a specialty clinic, but a lot of times they work for a corporation, they work for larger hospitals and things like that. And yes, you only see that patient for 3 to 7 minutes at a time, but that healthcare corporation that provider works for, they offer programs. They have diabetic education, they have mental health, they have, I know, like at Memorial, we have yoga, we have we have mind relaxation. So it goes back to educating the patient. Yes, you're going to go in, you're going to see the doctor, but you have to take control of your health. We say no one cares more about your health than you do. Your doctor doesn't care more about your health than you do. So you have to care about your physical health, your mental health. You have to care about those things. You have to take advantage. And a lot of times, because our mind isn't on taking care of ourselves, we go to the doctor, we get those pills, and we don't worry about lifestyle changes or diet changes. We don't go to those classes that are offered for free because we feel like we don't have time to do that, or we don't want to do that. If we don't feel that it's important for us to do those things. And I'm sure Dr. Ann, you can speak and attest to that as well.
Oh, absolutely. And to your point about a business, when I worked for myself in private practice, there were times that I worked like a dog and I couldn't pay myself because I had to pay malpractice, I had to pay the overhead, I had to pay all these things. And so the bottom line is, yes, it is a healing profession, but if you can't pay for the lights, your lights go off. And to the point that we don't have that much time with doctors, I want to leave some tidbits that are very important. Get a pen and paper and write these things down. Up until about a year ago, a little bit over a year ago, for decades, Medicare and other insurance companies mandated that doctors document some combination of these 8 things. And these things, if you didn't document enough of them and you coded too high, you could be charged with Medicare fraud. So you could lose your ability to see Medicare patients. So this was profound. But in addition to the billing aspect, they help us hone down what's going on. So the first one, think of Cleveland Cavaliers Stadium. Okay, CCL, I and you have nothing to do. They're just part of the mnemonic. And M. C, context. What were you doing when you developed a symptom? Doctor, I had back pain, but it happened right after I picked up a heavy sofa. The doctor's not going to order an MRI and say, come back in a few weeks and run up a bill. C, the character. If you have pain, describe it. It's a sharp, burning, dull, aching. That helps the doctor also pin things down. Location, be exact. Don't say I have belly pain. We don't know what that means. You've got a lot of organs in there. The upper right abdomen, the lower left abdomen. When you tell us exactly what's going on, we can hone in on what likely is and it's not going on. S, severity, scale of 1 to 10. 10 for a woman is childbirth. For a man, it's like I fell down and I broke my bones. 1 is, it's there. It's no big deal. So when you have pain, give them a scale of 1 to 10. What impact does it have on your daily activity? T, timing. Each time it occurs. That's the last seconds, minutes, hours, days. Give us the time. The A, associated signs and symptoms. When I have belly pain, I have nausea and vomiting and heartburn. D, duration. How long have you endured the problem? It's been going on days, weeks, months, years. Again, I and you have nothing to do. They're part of the mnemonic. M, modifying factors. When I have a headache and I take a Tylenol, I feel better in 30 minutes. If you go through these 8 things, whenever you develop a symptom, so by the time you get in to see your doctor, those 3 minutes, they're like 20 minutes because you've already gotten in your head exactly what the doctor is going to need to know. So you don't have to stop and think, well, I really wasn't paying attention. When you do that, the doctor needs to order more tests, more procedures, cost you more money. Prescriptions that may or may not work, cost money, can interact, can be dangerous. Come back to see me after the tests are done. If you can go bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, you can help the doctor rule out things very quickly, which means you're going to get the right diagnosis much quicker with less time, less money, and less suffering. So I suggest that you be respectfully assertive, know what you're talking about. When you are face-to-face with the doctor, be able to go through these things. Your doctor may not give you the floor for your 1-minute elevator speech, but he may. But even if he doesn't, when he asks these things, you will have thought about it. I once asked a patient a yes or no question. It took her 10 minutes because she had to think about it right then. We don't have time for that these days. We are not going to have that time with face-to-face care. And so be prepared before every visit.
And that's you mentioning that made me think about how those things can be implemented in the patient intake. When the medical technician or the nurse goes in there to do their vital signs and do their history and ask them, their chief complaint, those are the things that can be asked to help narrow down, because a lot of times the patient don't know. They ramble. They ramble even to us.
Because they don't know. We haven't taught them how to present themselves in a way that will help us get to the diagnosis quickly. And that is the fault of the medical profession. We need to equip people with the tools that they need to help us so we can be partners in the healthcare and get them what they need quickly and without breaking the bank.
I remember, I could really go on. I know I got to get to the next guest, but we got to get you on the podcast too, Dr. Hester, because I remember in 2008 when I was working for an insurance company after I had got off of active duty, I remember the president of the insurance company came to one of our trainings. And I said, oh, we offer this rider to patients in North Carolina for wellness, right? And I was like, should we try to upsell that to them, a wellness rider? And he was like, absolutely not. It's because it did not, at that point in time, guys, that nobody wanted to address wellness, right? As a wellness was actually seen as an additional cost. But, it's like the research started coming available. Like now, if we invest in wellness up front, right? And when we had like the patient care, we invest in wellness up front. That focuses helps with preventative care. That actually reduces cost in the long run. And it is for back in 2008. He might have just been. I don't even think he understood what he was saying. He's just looking at the business end of it, right? It's like, this is more money that we got to spend. I want to touch base on it, but I got to get to our next guest, girl. I got to get you on my podcast. I want to make sure, Julie, if you're listening in, I want to make sure that those points that she just talked about and walked us through to be able to self-advocate, that we capture that in a video clip that we're able to share, not only with Dr. Hester for her to share with her audience, but for us to share with our audience as well. Because she just walked you through how to walk in and advocate. And I think you address Dynamic Wellness is listening in. I think you really address some of her concerns, right? Because it's a business, and it's like we are healthcare providers, so we're on the side of that, right? We're on that side of the business ops. But from a patient standpoint, we're also patients too. We can self-advocate a little bit better, maybe, But again, here I am with a PhD in this stuff, and I'm passed out in a waiting room with no help. So where does it begin and end? Dr. Hester, I want to make sure I give you a moment to do a plug for your book, and then you can do your shameless plug when we do our roundtable in just a moment, okay?
Okay, so the book is called Patient Empowerment 101, More Than a Book, It's an Adventure. You can get that on Amazon. And then the next step is patientworld.net, where you can go to sign up for a variety of health and wellness courses. And African Americans don't see cardiologists anywhere near the way we need to. And I have some expert cardiology courses on the patientworld.net platform that will empower people to prevent the #1 killer in this country. That's heart disease.
Thank you so much. We're not done with this conversation, because listen, I did this as an ode to Black History Month, and then you guys get on here and I'm like, we got to keep talking about this stuff. We got to keep going with it, right? When God blesses us with platforms, we got to keep going with it and keep building for our communities. And so I'm definitely going to open my podcast is open to any of you guys. So we can come on and have an extended conversation about this topic. Thank you so much for today. And we're going to keep building. We're going to bring on our next guest. We're going to talk about, we're going to keep building on what Dr. Hester has said. We're going to talk about advocacy and this equitable workforce. Thank you so much, Dr. Hester.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Taylor, can you hear me?
I can hear you. You ready? Okay. All right, guys, this has been great. We're approaching our last guest. I'm really excited about this guest because this is my other best friend. So I'm really excited.
Work combat med.
But it just so happens that there are a group of us, all of us are in the healthcare lane. And so I'm so excited today to bring on my brother, Mr. Bradley Truth. And we're going to talk about, building an equitable workforce. And so, Bradley, thank you so much for coming on today. He is a radiology director, healthcare executive, and we're talking about healthcare workforce diversity. And I definitely want you to share your experiences, the career pieces, sharing about the passion and drive that you have for your career and what got you there. And let's talk about that private conversation we had. Let's just bring it online and talk about, your experiences in terms of hiring and the importance of representation in this workforce.
Okay. Well, my name is Bradley Truth. I've been working in healthcare for about 23 years. I come from a military family. Also, I'm third generation military. My mom and all of her brothers, except for one, were all in Desert Storm at the same time. My grandfather also served in the United States Army as well. So we represent every branch of the military. Unfortunately, some of us are also in the Air Force. But what can you do?
I feel a little hate, a little negativity. You feel that?
Air Force.
Oh, yeah, I feel
you mean the Chair Force? The Chair Force.
Call it what you want.
So you know what? I joined the military when I was 17, and I actually wanted to be a mechanic. I ended up getting my MOS changed because my 𝗄𝗲𝗹𝗹𝗯𝗲𝗶𝗃, which is like military talk for my boss. My boss saw my test scores, and he told me I need to get my job changed. And I wasn't very confident in my academic prowess at the time, so I thought he was about to have a conversation with me, telling me I was too dumb to be a mechanic in his army. But I spoke to my aunt, who also had served at the local military base as one of the head nurses in the hospital, and she let me know about the Army's X-ray program. And so I went to medic school, because back then you had to go to medic school and graduate medic school before the government would pay that higher fee for you to go through the Army's radiology tech program. So I did that. After that, I went and got myself a civilian job, because I was in the reserves. So I figured, 1 week a month, 1 month a year, and 2 weeks a year, and I'd be good to go. I wouldn't actually have to spend any time doing any real military stuff. So long story short, after a deployment and very long education, I ended up spending about 3 years on active duty out of my 6 years in the Army. And then, of course, your 2 years IR, where you're praying to God that they don't call you back because they were doing stop loss. But besides that, what really informs me for healthcare, I would have to say, would be my family. I have an amazing mother. She has 3 children. I love to tell people, because of all my siblings, I'm the oldest of 8, but I love to tell everyone that I'm the dumbest child of them all, especially when they come in my office and they look back here and see all these little sheets of paper on the wall. Yeah, I graduated like 6 times, never been to a graduation, because I'm like, let me just get the paper so I can go and get a better job. But as a kid, when I was growing up, like, oh my God, everybody, there's so many of my friends that still to this day, they don't call my mom Miss Truth. They call my mom Mom. They live with us. We weren't rich. I mean, we weren't even like, my mom struggled to keep us at the bottom of middle class, but we were extremely rich with love. I have a family that is so close and just so amazingly supportive, and we have a very mixed and diverse family. I have cousins who are Black, who are white, who are Filipino, who are obviously who are mixed.
So you have experienced diversity in your own family.
Yeah, and that's my expectation of the world too. That, like, so I am very supportive of Black people and of people of color, but I'm human first, and people do have to understand that we do have to all work together. We do have to all educate each other, because unless you're Elon Musk and you have a rocket that can take you to another planet, this is it. This is the only one that we got. So we have to make sure that we treat our fellow man as we would want to be treated. And when we say that, we don't treat the person only as we would want to be treated. We talk to the person. We get them to teach us how they want to be treated, and we take that interest in them.
Now, you have worked your way up to become a healthcare executive in, I would just say, corporate, quote unquote, America per se. And so you have the background and experience of hiring. Now, in our conversations, we talked about some of the stigmas, and you've heard it here today, where, the assumptions, the pain tolerance, and all of these things. I want you to speak a little bit to that, Bradley. I want you to start with like the assumptions, right? And yes, we want to work in environments and support environments where we're hiring a diverse workforce. But we also know that, and I will say, because even my experience in the military, right? We talk about some of these racial issues, but I've met good people in the military who have set me up for success, right? And that is a good network. Just as I've run into bad and good people in both areas. But when we talk about us as leaders, right? Yes, and we talk about seeing representation that looks like us. I want you to speak to some of those like challenges that you've seen as a healthcare professional, assumptions and stereotypes. But what do you do as because you can't literally go out and hire somebody just because they're Black, right? So how do you approach this from a person who's doing hiring in the workforce?
Okay. Well, let me say this first, because I don't want to misrepresent myself. I am not an executive in my organization. However, I am the radiology director over 4 hospitals and 4 clinics. We offer X-ray, CT, MRI, ultrasound, nuclear medicine, PET, and I'm also in charge of radiology scheduling, and we're going to be opening a new clinic soon. So at most organizations, that actually may be a corporate role. Like if I was to go to the other side of the country, out here in California, it is a bit different. Me personally, I cannot hire people obviously just because they're Black. What I would like though is if there were more Black people who were in radiology and who came into healthcare, period, because of some of the things that I have seen that are amazing, and some of the things that are also attempts that have been made that have fallen short when it comes to caring for a diverse community and also caring for specifically Black communities. So I'll give you an example. Early in my career, I was working in South Florida, and there I was a supervisor. I interviewed people so much that the other supervisors and the manager and the director was like, well, you know what, Truth, we just want you to interview everybody. I try to keep everything light and funny. I feel like interviews are extremely frustrating. I don't like doing them, even though I give interviews all the time. I even have a YouTube channel. It's called 𝗰𝗵𝗹𝗶𝗶𝗀. You may want to check it out because I give some tips on those sorts of things. But after a while of interviewing, because they would have me interview for other modalities. I was just a supervisor over X-ray at the time, but they would have me interview ultrasound, nuclear medicine, areas that were not my specialty, and wanted me to do it without the supervisor from that area. So I would have to pull them in and make them come. I'm getting to my point. So after a while of interviewing people, and I had some great candidates. People would come in. It was around the time when me and you met, Kristy. It was 2010, and I got a complaint after a while where someone said that I wasn't hiring any white candidates. And so I thought to myself too, because I'm aware of unconscious bias, and I'm like, well, do I have an unconscious bias? I went and I keep all of the paperwork from all of the people that I interview, as well as all of the applications that I get sent and that I review. And I looked, and there were barely any white people on there, primarily because we were in South Florida. So there's not the same number of white people and African Americans that you're going to get. In my radiology department, there were probably, I don't know, maybe like 30, 40 of us. And out of the 30, 40 of us, I was the only African American male. There was only one African American female. Everybody else was from the Caribbean, Central, or South America. And even when I looked through the paperwork for the applicants, you can look at the last names and tell that, you're not seeing Smith, you're not seeing Carmichael, you're not seeing those sorts of things. It's just those people, they either weren't applying or their applications weren't making it through the HR filtration process all the way to the point where it came to me.
So in this case, Bradley, because when we talk about this, we're usually taking it from the standpoint of the lack of diversity as it relates to representation in the African American community. But in this case, it was both. In this case, where we were living at the time, it just so happened to be an area where the population was primarily Black, people of African, Black, Caribbean descent, right? So sometimes this type of, when we talk about people, the feeling of discrimination can happen and people feel like it's in reverse, but it's really not. It's just the rule. But I don't want to overlook that piece of, as Black people, right? There's a level and piece of because that was a coincidence, right? Because we go somewhere else, right? These disparities exist where there is a lack of representation for us. But when we're playing the corporate game, we know that we can't just look at people and hire them because of their skin tone. So the piece of me, the part of me that talks about as a career coach is like being prepped and make sure you're ready for the job interview, because you can't always dismiss the systematic things that are going to happen. So how do you advocate for people? How do you support? Because again, you've had different roles around the United States. So how do you support having a diverse workforce?
Okay, so I started out that way so that I can also say this. I've been on the other side of it too, where you go for job interviews and it's almost as if you're not saying anything. I've also been in the room where when they're pulling job applications, they'll look at the name. If it's too hard for them to pronounce, they toss it.
I literally have been laughed at in an interview for, and I have a PhD. I'm looking at them laughing at me in an interview, and the racism was so obvious that I almost just left the interview. So
there's another caveat to it as well, and this is one of the reasons why it's so important. And I do want to tell you about a troubling theme that I've seen over and over again in healthcare over my 23 years. One is the way that people of color are treated when they come into the hospital, especially depending on what it's for. Like, I work in radiology. Here in the radiology department, we don't really do anything that's comfortable. Everything that we do is going to hurt, just about. So pain management is very important. And often you have patients who are who come in that are people of color, and there are times where their pain management is not exactly where it's supposed to be, to the point where, after observing this for a certain amount of years, when I found myself in a leadership position, one thing that I started making sure that I did was I have a presentation that I give about radiology to each hospital at the orientation portion for new staff members. And it talks about unconscious bias, the disparity between healthcare for people of color, how people, unfortunately, even in healthcare still to this day, believe that Black people have higher pain tolerance, believe that we literally have thicker skin, and that, you don't have to use the same type of pain medication for myself that you would use for another person. And also even incidences in emergency rooms where the World Health Organization is bringing attention to the fact that people of color, even if they have recurrent cancer and bone fractures, that they don't receive the same level of pain medication. So I make sure that I let people know that if this is unconscious bias that you have, this is something that you need to be aware of. Also, you work in healthcare, so patients come in, and sometimes patients are going to be frustrated. There are certain trigger words that have been used, and I've seen some here lately where sometimes a patient who's Black comes in with additional anxiety that other patients do not have, because you're fearful of going to the hospital. You're wondering if you're going to be heard, and then they call the situation as they may have seen how from their perspective, saying that it was racist. When something like that happens, you have to, as a leader of color, make sure that you have a workforce that's prepared to deal with those things. Because when someone says the word racist, people who are not people of color will shut down, and you can't do that, because I'm not allowed to do that for anybody else of any other color who comes in.
Bradley, I gotta stop, because I remember I promised you a special guest. I'm gonna let you finish that, right? But I gotta get this person on, because if I don't get on, I'm gonna run off. Okay, so we speaking of all that, and then we're gonna jump back in the panel, and we're gonna finish that discussion. So
no problem. Go ahead.
Speaking of diversity and inclusion, I want to bring on another special guest, my little sister.
Hi,
to you, Dr. And Bradley, you have been, so I'm jumping her in and taking her out. But Bradley, you have been with us over the past year as we have worked on a very special project that talks about diversity and inclusion. Karen, do you want to add a little bit to that conversation that Bradley's talking about?
Even myself as a physical therapist, I totally agree with everything that you say. I mean, I work here in Atlanta, and so it doesn't seem as obvious that there is a lack of diversity in my field. But in all honesty, Black people only make up 4% of the entire profession. It's not as obvious here in Atlanta, but even as a student coming through doing my rotations, I had patients who would come in and say, I want to be treated by you. And I'm like, well, I'm just a student. And it's like, well, I feel more comfortable being treated by someone of my race, because as you alluded to, when I go into the hospital or when I'm with the doctors, I don't feel as seen. I don't feel as heard. I often have the conversation about words that harm versus words that heal. You're a radiologist, so you understand when an x-ray is taken and then the doctor goes back and they say, well, you have this disease or something like that. They don't understand that. What does that mean? They think it's something that's really bad. And I'm like, well, given age, given race, given, gender, all of these things can really kind of factor into these things. And it's not a bad thing. It's just something that happens as we age. And so sometimes our community doesn't get that full explanation and they're left thinking something is severely wrong. And it's nothing more than, it's just something that happens over time. I often tell my patients, you get an MRI, it's just like taking a picture if you're on vacation. That's a picture of a moment in time. It's not indicative of something being severely wrong. It's just, this is what's going on right now. Now, what can we do to change what you're seeing on that picture?
Well, great job. And I want to make sure we do a quick plug for this, and then I want to give Bradley a chance to wrap up so that we can do our final round of discussion. But Bradley, when we talk about healthcare workforce diversity, I got to just listen to you, Karen. Obviously, got to get you on the podcast because you're a lot smarter than me on some stuff. I'll give you a little credit. But Karen and I, for the past year, we've worked on this coloring book called Colorful Careers in Healthcare. And so you'll hear more about this project as we prepare to launch over the next month. But we want to make sure that children have early exposure to careers in STEM. And we're going to do that based on healthcare career exploration. We want them to learn about healthcare terms, diversity, and we want them to, the educator in me wants to ensure that children are exposed to the drawing, writing, and the recall skills that they need. And this speaks to all of the things that our speakers have spoken about today. And so thank you, Karen, for quickly jumping on and meeting Brad. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to meet him, but I wanted to make sure I had a chance to surprise him. So thank you for taking a moment out of your day to jump on and speak. But I want to give Bradley an opportunity to wrap up, and then we're going to jump into this final roundtable.
All right, you guys have a nice day. I do have to jump off, but Bradley, it was good jumping on and being able to see you.
It's good to see you too, little sister.
All right, thank you, Karen. Thank you so much. Bradley, let you finish your statement. I had to get on because she was leaving in 10 minutes, but I want to make sure we have time to get to this panel. I want to surprise you with that because you know that we've been working on this project. But to your point, let you finish your statement and wrap up, and then we're going to move to our panel so that everybody can have a chance to plug themselves.
Okay. Oh, so again, cultural diversity. In those situations, you shouldn't be allowed to shut down. And we have to teach our staff how not to shut down when those things happen, because like I said, people who are people of color, especially Black people, are going to come in. They're going to have concerns about their health and fear related to healthcare, wondering if they're going to be heard that other people are not going to have to deal with. That's one of the reasons why, for example, women of color in healthcare, they have the highest mortality rates for breast cancer, for childbirth. You may experience higher levels of pain. You may experience or perceive discrimination, which can stunt your comfort level. And one thing that I do have to make sure that I really push with my staff is that when you're seeing people often on the worst days of their life. So you have to make sure that, as my auntie would say, that sometimes you may be the only Jesus that people see. So although they've already talked to a doctor, already talked to a nurse, when they come back and they speak with you, you want to make sure that you calm them as much as possible. Their head is likely spinning. They may have just come from the doctor's office and been given the worst news of their life. You're encountering them, although you're here every day. The patients that you're seeing consistently, you're going to be seeing someone on one of the worst days of their life. So you have to make sure you put on white gloves. You also have to make sure that your staff has the tools that they need to be able to approach situations like this and understand the concerns of people of color. One thing that I do is I start with this from the very beginning.
Hey, Bradley, I'm gonna add in our guests for the panel and let you give those last tidbits in the wraparound, okay? Because we're running short on time. But brother,
yeah, no problem.
So let me let the panel jump back in so we can continue this discussion as a group and as a team. I mean, I'm just so very thankful today for all of these brothers and sisters taking time out of their schedules to come in and share their expertise with us and really, go about, just making a difference in our community. So I'm going to put up the screen one more time, right? And I want to quickly, Bradley, I want you to finish that point, but I want to quickly do it around the room, right? You guys, I'm going to give you 60 seconds because this is not the shameless plug. This is just 60 seconds to share your a takeaway for today, and then we're going to do another round of room of the shameless plug. So we're going to start with Dr. Hester. In watching today, it'll be 60 seconds. We do a quick around the room. You sharing a plug. Sharing a little bit of what you learned, and then we'll go around the room, and then we'll go back around the room and do a plug for our businesses.
Okay. What I want to leave the audience with today is so many diseases are treatable, preventable, and reversible. And so if you focus on a diet, plant-based whole food diet, exercise regularly, minimize stress, good social relationships, avoid toxic substances, too much alcohol or tobacco, and you sleep well, you can add years to your life. And so let's focus on prevention and not waiting until the disease is there to figure out what to do with it.
Brother George, thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Hester. Brother George, excellent discussion on mental health.
Right. Well, for my point, I'm going to go back to something that I heard during Dr. Hester's talk, and she alluded to something in terms of accessibility. And while there is yet to be true parity, equality in healthcare, and there's a disparity in terms of what we receive as Black people and what the vast majority may receive, let us try to keep in mind that what we have is equal access to information through the internet, through resources now. And that's one of the things I hope to provide to my nonprofit, through information. That's power. So let's not let that limit us. Let's use our resources. Let's be our own advocates, and let's research our health, and let's try to use what we learn to improve ourselves.
All right, Dr. Case.
I just think we all have an opportunity to change the trajectory of Black health. And so I think that it starts with us and passing those good attitudes and good habits down to the generations to come. And let's just continue empowering each other so that we can change the health status of our community. I think that's really important. It's going to start with us, not anybody else. They're not going to help us. We have to do it for ourselves. So I'm just, again, really glad to be here. I think this is fantastic, and I loved hearing from everyone. So this is great.
It is very obvious that this conversation has to continue. Brother, I got to get you on my podcast because we have a lot to talk about with workforce too. But all of y'all need to be on the podcast. First of all, we need to do this again because the conversation doesn't just stop here, right? It's clear that this, based on the interactions we've had from the audience, that this is a discussion that needs to continue, that we're not going to be able to just wrap up in 15 and 20 minute segments, right? The issue is so deeply rooted. 𝗄𝗲𝗹, I know you're busy, girl, but you have found a way to join in, and we really appreciate you. So we want to. This is just the, what did I learn? The takeaway. We're going to do a plug.
Yes. I learned. I mean, as I kind of said, knowledge is power. It was so much knowledge given today, and it's priceless. And what we, choose to do with it, as it stated, Black health is so important. Preventative is key. Having knowledge on the right questions to ask, having knowledge on your feelings are valid, your concerns are valid. Everything that you want to do in terms of your health is important. So that was, to me, like one of the most valuable things I took from this is just really like Black health is important and knowledge is power.
Right. And it ain't just a Black History Month thing, right? We Black every day. I've been Black for 40 years. I got more experience being Black than I have experience being anything. Being a Black woman and being Black is what I have the most experience in. And it's always interesting, not me using my platform to preach, but it's always interesting when somebody tries to tell me about the experiences of me being Black. It's very interesting. So this is very important for us to be able to speak up for ourselves as Black health professionals. Angela, I'm going to get to you, but I want to make sure I hand it back over to our guest, Mr. True. And so that he can get his 60-second plug in, but then I want to go to Coach Angela J too.
I don't have anything to plug. What I do want to say is that mentorship is extremely important. And it starts from the moment that you're interviewing people. It starts from the moment that you're talking to your staff and making sure that they're brought to the same level of where you are and the standard that you want to hold. You want to make sure that you talk about diversity and inclusion. You want to make sure that you hold discussions with your team so that people get a better understanding of one another culturally, so that they can apply that to how they provide care, whether it's encourage them to learn other languages or even just picking up on things such as how some people may or may not take eye contact during a conversation, how some patients may have issues with being seen by certain physicians and are more comfortable with either a male or female or another person of color, and making sure that when you're the person who's in that room when decisions are being made, that you do bring up the Black perspective, so that you can make sure that the appropriate resources for the people that are in your community, whether it be imaging technology for dense breast tissue, which a lot of Black women have, is something that your company will invest in, so that the people that are in your community will start to begin a decline in breast cancer for women of color, because now you have technology that not every other hospital has.
Yeah.
That you can launch an outreach program based on that.
Yeah, right on, brother. Because what he's saying is so true. We had these dynamic conversations, and we're gonna do our around the rooms. But listen, the truth is like how when we lived in South Florida, it just happened to be people that looked like us. But if I live in Omaha, it's gonna be a very slim chance. You know, if I live in the Midwest, that people look like me. So what we have to do is we got to make sure that we're training a workforce that it doesn't matter if they Black, white, yellow, purple. You understand cultural competency and resiliency. So when people say that these conversations about DEIA are not necessary, they very much are, because can't nobody tell us about being Black because we've been Black longer than we done had a job. All right. Let me get Angela, and Angela, you can use this opportunity to do your shameless plug, and then we're gonna circle back around and do our final closeout.
Okay, so what I want people to take away from this Black Health Summit is that your mental health has to be intact. Your mental health is tied to your physical health. There has been lots of case studies. Like I said, I've been to school, got my master's degree. There's lots of case studies that I've read on, that I've been a part of, that shows that when your mental health is not there, you cannot overcome diseases. You cannot overcome illnesses, chronic pain. You won't be able to do that if you do not have the right mindset. So total wellness is the goal here. And it all starts in the mind. It starts with the mind to want to go to the doctor, the mind to want to live a healthy lifestyle and have a healthy diet. It all starts in the mind. And that's what I want to leave.
You better plug your business, girl. We ain't do this 2 hours. Be sitting over there. Tell the people where they can find you at, Coach.
And you guys can find me at www.soundmindwellnesscenterllc.com. I do one-on-one coachings. I use a lot of cognitive dissonance to get you to the place that you want to be. You can find me also on Instagram at Sound Mind Wellness Center LLC as well.
Well, thank you. Y'all better plug these businesses, okay? Or you better plug, your friend gonna be behind you. You have to push you off the cliff. You better promote this business. All right, Dr. Hester. Thank you so much. The shameless plug. Go ahead.
Okay, so you can get my book, Patient Empowerment 101, More Than a Book. It's an official on Amazon. If you go to patientworld.net, you can sign up to take a variety of health and wellness courses on demand, whatever you want to. Listen to the parts over and over again, everything from healthy weight management to heart disease to longevity. I'm going to start health coaching within the next few weeks, so I can be reached at support@patientworld.net, and I'm available for virtual speaking opportunities and workshops. And thank you again so much for doing this.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I mean, this was a but this is not the end of the discussion. So I hope that I can get each of you on the podcast and we continue the discussion. And so, Mr. Brooks, let me do that shameless plug. Tell them where they can find you.
Okay, well, the quickest way to get in touch with me is to reach me at 901-631-4300. I have my nonprofit Meta Association, so I'm looking for collaborations, looking to collaborate with other nonprofits and private citizens that are basically in grant positioning opportunities to where we can collaborate and get some work done. I'm also available for public speaking, life coaching, as well as consulting and also networking. So I'm always looking to network. So you can reach me at 901-631-4300. My nonprofit will have a new site coming up soon, metaassociation.org. That should be up within a couple of days. And you can also email me at gbrooks@metaassociation.org.
All right, Miss Case, Dr. Case, who did her research on Black women and PTSD. Tell them where they can find you. I know you're building, but we're going to get you on the podcast so that you can plug unshamelessly. Go ahead.
You can find me on Instagram at Single Mom Mess and on LinkedIn. And just look for some upcoming posts as well as some surveys that are going to be going out for further research regarding childbirth-related post-traumatic stress disorder.
Thank you so much. And to Mrs. 𝗄𝗲𝗹𝗯𝗲𝗶, she was able to jump back in. Go and do your shameless plug. Tell them where they can find you.
All right, you guys can find me on social media, Facebook, 𝗄𝗲𝗹𝗶, also www.saferoutscounseling.com. We are here for your mental health needs. We provide individual therapy, family therapy, couples therapy. We also do mindset and mental wellness coaching, and I'm available to always talk to the village about youth, mental health, and also parents, coaches, educators to just kind of give strategies on how to connect with the youth.
All right. And Brother Troop, did you have anything else to add in terms of contact or your shameless plugs or any other words of wisdom?
The only thing that I want to say is I would absolutely love to see more people of color in radiology. So please, if you are already in radiology and you're looking for a leadership position, unlike nursing, there isn't a nurse practitioner or a radiology practitioner course that you can really go to that's available to people. There's only one organization, and that's the AHRA. I would love for people to join. Last time I checked, they had about 5,000 members, and of the 5,000 members, only about probably maybe 14 or 1,500 of us about now actually have the CRA, the Certified Radiology Administrator certification. I hold one, but in radiology, there's a prevalence of people not wanting to bring in that manager, bring in that supervisor, and teach them the things that you need to know to be able to run a radiology department. So this is the back door to it, being able to become a member of this organization. I wish that there were more people of color. I haven't been to one of our conferences in about 2 years, but of the several that I did go to, I would go and I would actually count people of color, and including people who are Asian, including people who are Hispanic, obviously along with Black people. I would go and there would be 1,200 people show up to these events, and maybe only 35 of them are Black. That's kind of scary concerning how many healthcare issues that we have and the level of representation that you need, the level of representation that we actually need for us to be able to provide good healthcare. When you're in a radiology leadership position, you are able to exert a level of influence on a large amount of patients. I mean, a large amount of patients. We may see the slowest exam we do is an MRI. We can see 1,000 patients in one of my clinics, and then 3,000 here at my hospital. So that's just radiology. In a day, we're going to do thousands and thousands of patients' exams. Many of those are going to be people who are laying on the table, who have worries and concerns and issues that may not have been addressed any other way. So I really want to urge people to push mentorship, do it from the top down, join the AHRA, and get your foot in the door. You can reach out to me and contact me. I have LinkedIn, and I'm also on, and I also have a little YouTube channel called WORxK Solutions. It's primarily aimed at young people and people who are coming into radiology. But that is it. Love is an action word. So I just want to make sure that people understand that it's a skill, and it has to be taught. You're not always going to find a school that's going to teach it to you, but you yourself can be the principal, the librarian, and you can bring someone along with you so that they can make the change that they want to see in the world. I'm sorry for being so long-winded.
All right, brother. Well, that's all right, because you still my brother. And so I just say, look, I can't close it out without doing my own shameless plug. I'm still a little technology illiterate here, but I want to make sure that I share a copy of this book, right? And showcase that, because like I said, when we talk about early exposure, we have been working on this project for a year. And I want to just quickly say this because you'll hear more about it. These characters in this activity book that my sister and I have put together, we literally, I have spent a year sending stuff back to the illustrator, like the hair don't look right. That's a sister. She's supposed to have braids. She's supposed to have twists. And you see me, I'm the health science professor. But we featured ourselves in this because we were sick of seeing situations where, when we talk about early healthcare exposures, where people didn't look like us. But to Bradley's point, it's like there's a diverse workforce about how you train your staff, because it's going to be situations where people don't always look like us, right? So we are going to be doing some work over the next few months where we launch this project. You can find it on WORxK Solutions LLC, or you can go to 𝘄𝗲𝗹𝗯𝗲𝗶.com, because we're going to be doing initiatives where we focus on equity and promoting a more diverse healthcare workforce. In this book and activity guide and the videos that we have to go along with it play an important role. So that was my shameless and unshameless plug as we transition to more of a social impact focus. Guys, this is not the last time that we're going to do an event like this, but I want to say to each of you guys, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules today to do this. It came to me when I launched this in the middle of the podcast. I think while 𝗲𝗄𝗎 was talking, I was like, hey, I scheduled this for the 24th, but unconsciously, without even realizing, my grandmother, tomorrow marks the 2-year anniversary that my grandmother, Elizabeth Ruth Brown, passed away, and she was a nurse. And I think with almost every other book I put out, I dedicated to her, because she had so much influence on my career in the healthcare profession as well as care. So I want to actually dedicate this event to her and her loving memory for all that she's done for us, and in her paving the way and being in a time where even being Black, being excellent in Black wasn't enough, right? Her and my granddaddy strove to build so that we can have better. So I want to dedicate this event to her and her memory. So again, thank you guys for attending today. We put a link, Jules put that link in the chat where people can go and download the event guide and brochure. All of the information for our speakers are in the event guide and brochure, and as well as clickable links to be able to access them. We're posting a survey here in the thing that we would like for you guys all to please, and then be on the lookout for a post event article where our speakers will again share additional insights about what they learned today and how meaningful today was. So I want to say thank you again, and this has been an excellent event, and we look forward to future collaborations with each of you guys. Thank you, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.